program, where the 5 main schools have been preparing our students in the areas of commercial food preparation, construction, furniture making, and crop production. Mr. Speaker, to date, we can say that we have successfully completed 1 CVQ. That's in the area of construction in only 1 school. We've had many challenges, and we want to use this opportunity to commend the Westerhall Secondary School and to the teachers there who made all the sacrifices. Yes, Mr. Speaker, teachers make a lot of sacrifices. They do. And we look forward to the other schools continuing in implementation of this program, because, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, it's all about the future of this country. It's all about preparing the students so that they can fit into society, so that they can go out there into society and make meaningful contributions to the development of our country. Mr. Speaker, every year 700 students graduate from the T.A. Marisho Community College, one of our premier tertiary education institutions, and growing, still growing, always growing. They graduate with associate degrees, diplomas, and certificates from 52 program areas. Mr. Speaker, we know that our institution is one of our main tertiary institutions. We want this Honorable House to know that this institution is on a drive to develop initiatives locally, regionally, and internationally, so that we can continue to grow and continue to provide the best education possible, the best tertiary level education possible. The institution has participated in this year's robotics competition in Mexico for the 2nd year. A team comprised of students from TAMCC as well as other secondary school students around the island. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that they represented Grenada well. Even though they didn't get placement positions this year, the knowledge and the experience that would have gained from these students preparing for this competition, for traveling to the area, to seeing what other countries are doing, that is priceless, Mr. Speaker. And so we want to commend the teachers that would have worked along with the students to guide them, to ensure that they have that experience we know to be priceless. Mr. Speaker, TAMCC recently received during this year a grant, a donation in cash, also in kind, of $1.8 million from various donors for projects. Mr. Speaker, these projects would have been aimed to improve the teaching and learning environment at the college. As part of the drive of the college to improve, continuous improvement is needed in all of our institutions, and TAMCC will not be left behind. Mr. Speaker, funds from this project went towards the upgrade of the Tourism and Hospitality Department, which is right now, Mr. Speaker, a state-of-the-art teaching and learning center. Mr. Speaker, a brand new hotel was just opened yesterday. We have to provide these investors with good quality workers. And so as a college, we will better be able to supply young people, young adults, to the hotel industries who are of good standard and who are open and willing to learn to work in these new environments. Mr. Speaker, TAMCC continues to forge academic partnerships locally, regionally, and internationally with institutions for increased training opportunities for faculty, staff, and students. In the academic year 2018-2019, the college strives to collaborate further with our government through our Ministry of Education, Tertiary Education Department, the Caribbean Development Bank, to renovate the physical plant of TAMCC. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if you've been there recently, but the compound is in need of an upgrade and upliftment to provide education beyond the 21st century. We really need to have proper facilities. And so the renovation to the physical structure is welcomed. It will also involve capacity building and the introduction of relevant components of technology in all of the campuses. There's St. Patrick's campus as well, St. George's, there's the Maribor campus. All these campuses, Mr. Speaker, would get an upgrade in light of the need for technological advancement and to better prepare our young people for the world of work. Mr. Speaker, this $1 million contract has already been awarded for assessment, and a local team would meet with the consultant during next week, in preparation for assessment, which will begin early in the new year to come. So, Mr. Speaker, there is form of continuous improvement at the T.A. Marichaud Community College. During the year 2019, the college will focus on a marine technology program. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of that out there now. Grenada has need to develop in the area of marine technology. We see what a wonderful boating area we have at Lagoon Road. We see how much yachts come into our shores time and time again. We need to be able to service those yachts. We need more people involved. There is not enough workers in that department. And so we have to focus on this as a ministry. We have to support TAMCC in its initiatives. We also have the National Training Agency, NTA, working along with agencies in New Zealand to improve in that area as well and provide marine technology services, marine technology training to various young people in our country. Mr. Speaker, TAMCC would be focusing on creating more professional development programs for secondary and primary school principals and administrators as well. The college has been focusing on professional development for all teachers in its department and will continue on a drive to generate more revenues because sufficient grants were not gotten. A soft loan would be taken, yes, Mr. Speaker, but there has to be ways of generating more revenues to cater to the needs of the college if we want the advancement of our young people for the world of work. A smart classroom would be developed, Mr. Speaker, during the year 2019 to ensure the integration of ICT in the education process. And the college prepares to host the 3rd annual Windward Island debating competition in February to March of 2019. Mr. Speaker, in our education outreach program at the ministry, very small department, we promote lifelong learning among adults in Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique. Level 1 basic literacy programs have been implemented with focus on family learning, Mr. Speaker, a new approach to learning. And something like that is necessary now in our nations. the fact that our students have been home for over 2 weeks now, and I'm very pleased that they're back in the classroom today, Mr. Speaker. We have to ensure that families understand the role that they have to play in their children's lives. Our teachers have been doing their job, preparing the students for CSEC exams, preparing the students for CPA, Mr. Speaker. But we have to ensure that parents understand that they are the first teachers of the children. And so this education outreach, lifelong learning program for adults in the community aims to do just that, so that parents can see themselves as an extension of their children in terms of their education and provide the support that the children need. To empower the parents themselves who may need some upgrade in literacy, in numeracy, these lifelong learning activities would ensure, Mr. Speaker, that parents learn how to read with their children and how to teach their children how to read. Right now, Mr. Speaker, the students who have been at home, if parents are not aware of how to help their children, if we have not gotten to those parents as yet in our very small, there's only one person working in this department, Mr. Speaker, so most likely could not have gotten to everyone. During the year, an average of 400 parents have been interacted with and ideas have been shared how to help your child at home. Mr. Speaker, that has been done over 2 terms in 8 schools. But I just want to say to the parents out there who by now should be frustrated because their children have been home for so long. They have to prepare for CSEC exam. They are not in a position to help them. But Mr. Speaker, I just want to say to those parents, there's not much that you have to do. I have known parents who cannot read and write themselves and have produced doctors. Ben Carson, I don't think his mom was able to read and write, and he is one of the greatest surgeons that we have around. I just want to tell parents out there, do not lose hope. But you must use your voice. Parents, you must use your voice. You must speak out. You must ask for more help in this area. And you must avail yourselves to programs that have been made available in your community so that you can help your child. Look at that. Your children have been home for 2 weeks now. And many of you don't know what to do to help them. You're not saying anything. There's no PTA out there saying anything. Everyone just accept. Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy that we've returned to the negotiating table today. It is about time. We are playing with the lives of our children. And parents are at home saying not enough. We have to teach our children that the way to settle differences is around the table. Parents have to come out and speak out about this. Parents, I just want to assure you that this government that I am now part of is a real caring and concerned government. For the first time, these discussions are being held. Mr. Speaker, this tells a lot about our government. Our government has been calling the union to the negotiating table, and it's going to be happening today at 10 o'clock, and we're very happy about this, because this is the only place where it can be settled. If the union is giving one figure, the government is giving another figure, there's no way you can solve that out there in the streets. It doesn't help to have our children at home. Our children should be continuing their education while the negotiation continues. Parents, you have a role to play. You must speak. So I hope that, I'm so happy our Minister of Labor is still here. I don't hope he's traveling before the meeting today. I'm happy he's still here. Yesterday I heard he say he's traveling and he's going to appoint somebody, Deputy Minister of Labor. He even called me name, Mr. Speaker. Poor me. Me go and negotiate it with, with our President General, not me. Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that I'm very happy, and I hope that we are a good example to our students today and show our children how problems get resolved. Mr. Speaker, it's called negotiations. I think if you ask me for 2 mangoes, I say, well, I ain't giving you none. Eventually you can say, okay, well, give me 1, and I might consider it. Mr. Speaker, I hope this is resolved very amicably today, and our students have an opportunity to continue with their education. Parents, you can go on YouTube. You can self-taught, or you can be self-taught. You can educate yourself. Look at what happened over the last 2 weeks, Mr. Speaker. I'm saying it again and again. As a past teacher myself, I know that we can't do it all. It's parents that have to come in, and parents have their contribution to make to their children's education. Your children would have missed quite a bit. We cannot reach you, Mr. Speaker, because we have no allocation in our budget to increase our lifelong learning department, our education outreach department. We have 1 person working there, blessed Mrs. Niles. Ms. Niles, good morning. I know you're listening. Parents, help yourselves. Go to YouTube and type in how to help my child at home. You'll be given tips. Sometimes it's as simple as ensuring that your child has a nutritious snack to eat while studying. It's as simple as bringing a glass of water for the child or making a glass of juice. You don't have to have plenty while the child is there studying. Basically, all you have to do is make sure that the child is there, engaged in their books, doing their schoolwork. You don't have to understand the maths, the English, the physics, the Spanish, or the French. I can assure you of that. And I just want to remind you, have a voice. Parent Teachers Association, you are created for a purpose, to speak out in times like these and to help bring the solution closer and faster. You have been quiet, and that is not right. Mr. Speaker, we have good parent-teacher associations out there, parents who work hard for their schools, who work hard for the nations, for the children, and for the improvement of education. Come together and help your children ensure that their education continues. Mr. Speaker, in our lifelong program, facilitators were also trained. Teachers were also trained by our literacy officer. They were trained in the implementation of basic literacy skills with a focus on the alphabetic code as a first step in teaching parents how to learn to teach their children to read. So basically that was the objective of, well, that has been the objective. It has been achieved, and we look forward to expanding. Mr. Speaker, in the area of scholarships, our Human Resource Department, through our scholarship desk, has been able to, our ministry, our government has been able to offer 173 scholarships to our nation, young adults and youths, so that they can travel or stay right here in Grenada and realize their dreams. Mr. Speaker, this 173 scholarships has a value of $48.5 million, and that has been awarded by our government with partnerships from St. George's University that catered for 112 scholarships, China, the Republic of China, 26 scholarships, Cuba, 12 scholarships, and we want to thank all the other countries like Russia, Romania, that have been providing scholarships. We do thank them for the contributions that they have made towards our students. And our government continues to pay economic cost bursaries to the University of the West Indies and also to give island scholarships. And also, Mr. Speaker, we are very proud to announce that Trinidad and Tobago usually gives 10 scholarships, but for this year they were not able to fund it. And so as a government, we had to come in and realize that these 10 young people do not lose out on their dreams and are not disappointed, because they would have given up their jobs. Some may have taken a little loan. Some would have packed their bags heading for Trinidad when they were told that the scholarships were off. But Mr. Speaker, as the good, caring government we are, we came in and was able to fund the cost of the tuition for those students when the other island was not able to do so. Mr. Speaker, this is how some of our little reserves are used. Very, very important. These 10 people, when they come back to Grenada, they will contribute to the development of our little island. And we're very happy that we were able to assist them and so not break that dream of theirs. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to St. Patrick East constituency. And I want to say that I'm very happy that we have good representation here today from St. Patrick East. These people left home very early, Mr. Speaker. I don't think they had breakfast, you know. We come from the farthest part of the island, well, except Carriacou, of course. But we come from the farthest part of the island, and it's always a challenge to get down here early. But we do, time and time again. I want to thank you for being here. I want you to know that I am forever grateful for giving me the opportunity to be your representative. And for me to stand here today, a very proud Grenadian, I want you to know that I'm fully aware that I couldn't do this without you. And so feel free to remind me constantly that you helped to make it happen. To those of you who are out there listening, I too would like to thank you. You have been very good and very faithful. I look forward to serving you. It's only been a few months, and we cannot do all that you want us to do in a very short space of time. I just want you to know out there, the people listening in St. Patrick, that good things take time. Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud to announce that at our constituency office, we were able to serve over 200 persons in the area of education, tuition, transportation, medical assistance, and just general assistance to people in the community. Mr. Speaker, we promote tertiary education in St. Patrick East, whole of St. Patrick. We have to increase the amount of students that we have traveling down to TAMCC, traveling to the University of the West Indies, traveling down to SGU, to further their education. And so we have been able to give them assistance. We hope that we can do more. Mr. Speaker, these young people also need certification. They finish high school, they don't have much going for them. If we are to prepare them for the world of work, if we're to prepare them to replace us in the future, we must invest in them. And so a slice of the pie, a piece of the cake, has to continue to be allocated to our social programs for the development of our young people, Mr. Speaker. All of it cannot go in one area. Mr. Speaker, we must continue to support the seed program, the housing program, so that these young children, Mr. Speaker, when I was in school, I spent 26 years of my adult life in school. I spent all my life in school. And I never realized when a child didn't come to school that it was probably because or I don't know, I mean, they couldn't find, I mean, not just food and, you know, and clothes, you know. Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking honestly. I didn't realize how your living condition can affect your drive and your desire to achieve. Mr. Speaker, as representative, we visit homes. And sometimes when we see the living conditions of some of our young children, we must continue to put more money into the housing program. And I'm sorry the Minister of Finance is not here today. I want to tell him we need some more in St. Patrick's East. You know, more housing. It affects the productivity of our young children. We cannot say that these programs are not important. And as Mr. Speaker, I didn't understand until I went out into the field. As a teacher, you just go to the classroom. Even as a principal, I wanted to go out and visit, you know, but it just never happened. You're so busy on the plant. And I was in charge of the second or third largest school in the island that had so much boys that had me going. I couldn't get to go out there. But when I made the decision to leave my job, to go out there and serve my country in a different capacity, Mr. Speaker, that's when I came to understand what this little roadwork meant to people. Mr. Speaker, some of them, that's the only employment they had for the year. Sad to say, the only employment they had. And in St. Patrick's East, if you don't give them the roadwork, it's problems, you know. Just yesterday, I just had to hold my head and I said, my goodness. You know, basic needs, Mr. Speaker. Food, clothing, shelter, a little employment. A little employment our people need out there. So, Mr. Speaker, I didn't understand why some children drop out of school. I didn't understand what was going on the blocks. Although I knew. I really didn't understand until I left the classroom. I want to just appeal to my teachers out there. You might be saying that maybe I sell out too, but I mean, I sell out. I ain't selling out. I just saw both sides of the coin. I see need for your pension and whatever gratuity is agreed upon. Of course, Mr. Speaker. I've been a teacher all my life, you know. You know. All right. Mr. Speaker, I mean, I would support whatever is agreed upon today. Mr. Speaker, our teachers work hard. They contribute to the development of our nation. We couldn't be here today without having a caring teacher that looked out for us, pulled us aside and said, hey, you need to work on that. Hey, you're going to do well, you know, but you see what you're doing there is not going to work. If it were not for teachers like that, and Mr. Speaker, if it was not for a principal like you, maybe I wouldn't have been a principal myself. He was one of my best principals. Mr. Speaker. Yes. Mr. Speaker took time out from his office, came down to my classes and directed me how to teach certain labs to students. Priceless. I never forgot that. Mr. Speaker, you were a caring teacher, a caring principal. We are all here today because we all become who we are because of those people who have touched our lives. And I want to appeal to the nation's teachers, regardless of what happens today, remember the child. Remember that the child needs the social programs. Remember that government has to give a piece of the pie in every aspect, every area of life, so that the child can become whole. I ask you for that understanding. And I have seen both sides of the coin, and I now know the value of it. Mr. Speaker, many of these young children have no electricity at home. And in St. Patrick's East, Mr. Speaker, we have identified 20 homes where people cannot pay their electricity bills. the children cannot study. They can't read. Some sit in the street lights. Mr. Speaker, it's very important to note that as a constituency, we will be providing them with solar electric, what's it called again? Solar electric, solar panels and solar lights. Yes, Mr. Speaker. Solar lights for the people in our constituency. Mr. Speaker, a little piece of the pie has to go towards that too, so that the child can do well in school. We are very pleased to make this contribution. It would have been good maybe to connect electricity in the home through the service provider. But Mr. Speaker, we know that we have to, we have to contribute to a green economy, and so solar lights is the way to go forward. And we look forward to presenting the people with their solar panels, with their solar lights, so that the children can continue. Mr. Speaker, as a constituency, we are in the process of purchasing computers for the Rose Hill Community Center, where we have an after-school program running so that children can continue to learn. Children would be encouraged to do their homework after school. Mr. Speaker, I selected the community of Rose Hill because there's a really sad event going on there, and I'm really embarrassed to say. In the community of Rose Hill, Mr. Speaker, we have children dropping out of school. I know it happens island-wide. But when I was in school, I used to think only secondary school children drop out of. I used to think they only did it when they got to Form 4, when the work got too heavy for them. But Mr. Speaker, when I went out into the field to work in the community of Rose Hill, and I learned that little children are dropping out of primary school, I couldn't understand it. Mr. Speaker, if we don't look out for these children who have been dropping out of school, if we don't continue with our education outreach program, lifelong learning programs to educate on these parents, on the value of keeping their children in school, what are we going to become as a country? So, Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy that we have a special project fund that we can allocate a little bit of the pie to help these little children do their homework. Because the parents, some of them, maybe they too may have dropped out of school. That is a sad case. Maybe they feel hopeless, that the work is too heavy. So we are providing that service in the community of Rose Hill. And Mr. Speaker, we hope to expand and make it much, much better. So Mr. Speaker, the reason for attending to this program wasn't only my visit to the community and to learn children have been dropping out of primary school. It was listening to the teachers in the parish. The students there, they go to St. Patrick's Roman Catholic, they go to St. Patrick's Anglican, they go to River Sally and Montrose School. From when they finish at the little preschool in Rose Hill, they leave at the age of 7. The teachers there have been calling out to me and telling me there's a serious problem in the community. The teachers themselves have identified it. And I know that we will continue to work together. So far, 6 teachers have offered their assistance to help with the Rose Hill school dropout program. And I applaud these teachers. I applaud them for caring enough and speaking about it and coming to me about it and offering their services. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, when we finish outfit the community center, that we will have a very, very serious after-school family, life training, lifelong learning program there. We will involve the family as well. So Ms. Niles will be joining up to Rose Hill to assist in this program in my constituency. So, Speaker, I just want to say to the elderly in the area, you have not been forgotten. We have not treated you much for the last few months, and that's because we didn't get all the resources that we needed, you know, to make you feel valued and important, and to award and applaud you for the contributions that you've made to the development of this country. Mr. Speaker, I just want to say to our elderly in River Sally, Rose Hill, Hermitage, Montrose, Leverett, Montfendu, and all other villages around that we'll very soon be having this award ceremony for you, because we honor and we applaud the contribution that you have made. We have been able to get some resources, and we'll be able to do this very, very soon. Mr. Speaker, I want to applaud our housing brigade. We were able to give out almost 30 housing to almost 30 families using $200,000. We know it's not much because the housing situation is really bad, and we want to ensure that our children live and work in a good environment that would, you know, empower them to go out there and succeed. That's why I've been asking for some more funds, you know, and Mr. Minister of Finance, I'm going to talk to him again and again and again. We need some more housing allowance in St. Patrick East. Our children need to be comfortable. Our housing brigade has been working really well. They have repaired 16 homes over the last 6 months. Very well done. Great team working together. A team of committed people. I thank them. We have created employment for 1,752 persons, temporary employment in the bushing program. And we have 24 persons that have been employed for a longer period of time as environmental wardens. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, I want to applaud them for the contribution they made in saving 3 of our beaches from the sargassum seaweed invasion during the months of June and July. Mr. Speaker, because of the intervention of these wardens, because of their presence, we were able to safeguard Bathway Beach. We also safeguard our new beach, which is second to none next to Grandin's Beach. It's called Breakwater Beach. And I want to invite everyone up to St. Patrick Breakwater Beach. It's awesome. Mr. Speaker, since Breakwater Beach was created as a result of the Breakwater Project to save the tongue of Sotez, a $4.6 million project, since that was done to save the tongue of Sotez, Mr. Speaker, that's where all the little monies have to go. That was an emergency. The tongue would have been washed away by now. It created a lovely beach, a great expanse of sand. I invite you up there to enjoy it. Mr. Speaker, they have been cleaning our beaches and ensuring that, you know, people continue to visit Bathway Beach, create employment for or to create revenues for people who are there selling on those beaches. Mr. Speaker, we boast of our Imani program. 50 young persons have been selected, young people who had no hope, have no means of, you know, developing themselves for a future. We also boast of 30 Empower, young men for Empower, particularly from the area of Rose Hill. Mr. Speaker, I told you about the issue with school dropout. Many of these young men get into trouble with the law when they drop out of school so early. Yes, Mr. Speaker, can I?
You do have 15 minutes more.
15, wow. Thank you, my generous speaker. Mr. Speaker, the program Empower is another way of reaching out to the young people in the community. Yes, I told you about our after-school program. We've been able to use some of our funds, purchase computers, and so help to prevent further dropouts, hopefully. That is our objective. But we have the situation where there's a lot of young men on the blocks, on the streets. And so, Mr. Speaker, we have been so grateful for this program to be started. We have a great percentage of the 30 coming from the community of Rose Hill. Mr. Speaker, they've been in and out of prison, many of them. Some that we selected for the program, they're waiting on cases. We don't know if they're going to get to finish the program. But, Mr. Speaker, it breeds a sign of hope. It shows that these young men do not have to commit themselves to a life of crime. It shows that we as a government are giving them the opportunity that they need to redeem themselves. And I'm really, really happy that this program has started, Mr. Speaker. These young men would have an opportunity maybe to start their own businesses, you know. And Mr. Speaker, I want to speak now about a program that also affects that community. A program, a personal, well, I wouldn't say personal, but it's my baby project. You know, you must have something that, you know, that you're all excited about. It's called the Shambo Water Project, Mr. Speaker. It's a program, a project that would affect half of my constituency. 3 main PDs, 3 of the largest areas: River Sally, Montfendu Plains, and Rose Hill. These young men, Mr. Speaker, I would like to let you know that they would benefit as well from this project, if not the ones in Empower. Other young men would have an opportunity to farm in Shambo, because we were able to get $340,000 from the Japanese Climate Change Project for the farmers in Shambo to bring water from Montfendu River, channel it up Highgate, down into Plains and into Shambo Estate, where there's over 100 farmers farming. Mr. Speaker, during the dry season, they cannot produce much, and so there's reduced income for themselves and their families. They have a challenge to send their children to school. Mr. Speaker, we know some of these young men have been involved in, you know, some issues. Many of them, they pick soursop off trees that don't belong to them. I didn't say that, but, you know, they go and they pick it. Yes, the member for St. Andrews Southwest said it, not me, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these, you know, young people would be invited into Shambo to grow their own soursop. Mr. Speaker, I want to say to the people out there who told me during election that this is some election gimmick, and how, you know, the last representative for the area always spoke about, you know, the one who from another administration, from the previous administration, always spoke about Shambo being the breadbasket of the country. And, you know, nothing much was done, and that I will be no better. Well, Mr. Speaker, that's all they had to say to me. Mr. Speaker, I want to tell the people of St. Patrick East, all the farmers in River Sally, Rose Hill, Montfendu, and Plains with lands in Shambo, that $340,000 has been invested thus far, and we have 2 greenhouses. 2 greenhouses that is on its way from somewhere in South America. It will be here by November 31st. 30th, so, oh, my bad. November 30th. Create another one. 2 greenhouses for the farmers of Shambo. And for the youths, farmers and youths, to learn how to farm scientifically, Mr. Speaker. I want to say that I heard a news item saying that agriculture only got, you know, the lowest of the 10th, whatever percentage of the budget. Mr. Speaker, this 340,000, that's an agriculture project, you know. Ministry of Agriculture is working very closely with the Shambo farmers and, you know, and myself as representative for the area in ensuring that this project comes on foot. This project was written up with the assistance of the Ministry of the guidance and direction of Ministry of Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, they have just surveyed 5 acres of land. That will be the demonstration or the teaching plot so that farmers can learn how to increase on their productivity. And Mr. Speaker, Ministry of Agriculture is in on this. So this $340,000 can be added. Mr. Speaker, we have Youth in Agriculture projects going on at the Ministry of Youth. Mr. Speaker, of the $2.3 million that was awarded to skills development, a percentage of it goes or will be going towards agro-processing, towards, you know, poultry farming. Mr. Speaker, agriculture is, I mean, you know, very, very important to us. So I was sad, you know, when I heard that said agriculture is not being considered. Mr. Speaker, that is not the case. So, Mr. Speaker, in Shambo, many of these young men and women, and also single mothers, will be given an opportunity to come down and work a plot of land in the area. Mr. Speaker, a greenhouse produces a lot of money. We have 2 coming, 30 by 100 feet. That's a lot of production. Mr. Speaker, I want to say to the farmers of Shambo that I have promised that you'll get your own tractor one day. This greenhouse, I trust, will be well managed. Mr. Speaker, we are going to ensure that there is a committee in place, the same Skills Development Institute committee and, you know, board of directors that is supervising Snell Hall would also assist us in putting a committee together to supervise Shambo so it is formally and officially done, Mr. Speaker. We know that the farmers won't be able to manage it well. So we're going to form this same cooperative, this same board of directors would assist us in that regard. And Mr. Speaker, I look forward to this. And when you miss me in Parliament, you're going to find me in Shambo with my boots. Yes, I was an agricultural science teacher for 26 years. That's why I have such a bias towards agriculture. I can't help it. My dad was also a farmer. Mr. Speaker, we cannot ignore the young people in our nation. We cannot. And all that I've spoken about here, Mr. Speaker, is geared towards filling the gap that I see is affecting the school system. Like I said, when I left school, when I was in school, I didn't know all the reasons why a child dropped out of school. We need our social programs. As parliamentarians, we have to assign our funds that we have for our special projects in the constituency to further support and enhance the lives of these young people. You heard me calling for more housing. That is to ensure that these young people have proper facilities in order to live. And we welcome our Minister of Finance and Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I know I don't have much time remaining. I just want to say that we have to work together. I'm happy that I left school so that I can make now a contribution in another avenue, another area to contribute to the development of the future of our country. And I just want to call upon our teachers, those who have been working along with me. I applaud and appreciate your caring nature. Teachers are caring people, Mr. Speaker. I know that the students back in the classroom, today, Friday, honestly, Mr. Speaker, not much going down. Not much going to be happening today. Today is Friday. But I know that there are teachers out there, and I have worked with a lot of them. I know that there are teachers who will ensure that the children get all their work done and get up to speed. And I want to call upon those teachers out there to continue to contribute to the lives of the nation's children. At the end of the day, when one child comes back and said, Miss, I made it because of that one thing you did for me. Miss, I am successful today because you took time out with me. This is when it all matters. And like I said, I trust all goes well with the negotiations today. And I would like to call again upon our parents and let you know you too do have a voice. And you too must prepare for times like these so that you can help your children succeed. Do not leave it all upon us as teachers. Or I always said that, sorry, Mr. Speaker. Do not leave it up to the teachers alone. Parents have a very critical role to play as well. And I would also like to thank the persons from our ministry. We have our PS here today, Ms. Jacinta Joseph, and the one worker, Mr. Speaker. We have a small department at the ministry, very small department. I want to thank Ms. George, who's here as well, our skills development officer. Thank our PS, thank all members of the scholarship desk for working along, for all the contributions that they have made, and, looking forward to continuing to work with them. Mr. Speaker, I just want to end again by applauding the people of St. Patrick's East who have shown me nothing but great support. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Representative for St. Patrick. And the 15 minutes that was given to her is not because she said nice things about me.
I wondered about that,
Remember, the bell would ring at 1 hour, and you have 15 minutes after that. So after you hear the bell, you don't have to wait. Just continue. Just remember, you have 15 minutes after that. You don't have to use all. What you don't use, I would get an opportunity to use it a little later. Just before you come on, Madam, are there any PSCs in the gallery? If you are, your place is behind your minister. Come down. Come and sit behind your minister. Let the nation see who is there to support the minister. Come down. Yes, sit behind your minister. I remember as a PS and a chief education officer, I would position myself behind my minister.
Yes.
In the event that she forgot a word, I would pass a paper, quickly pass a paper to her. You have to make sure that you are there to protect and defend your minister, even in the parliament. So we would just give a short moment for that to happen. And ministers, could you say, parliamentary representative and ministers, please say to your permanent secretary or your chief technical officer when they come, and you are in parliament having to make any delivery, that they come close to you. Don't go alone. Honorable Representative for St. Andrew Southwest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with due respect to you, I thought at one time it crossed my mind that I may have to say something good about you. And this morning, I want to tell you how good you look.
Thank you.
Without that wig. Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate you on that bold step you have taken. In a new facility like this, you need a new look. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the 2019 estimate of revenue and expenditure as presented before this Honorable House by the Honorable Minister for Finance under the theme, Building Resilience, Advancing Social Development, Transforming Our Economy. Having been bestowed the honor of Finance Minister of the Year for the Caribbean, bears testament of his excellent stewardship of the Grenadian economy and the sacrifice of our people in transforming our economy. Mr. Speaker, I wish to recognize also the Permanent Secretary and her team at the Ministry of Finance for their dedication towards the preparation of the 2019 budget. Their efforts is deserving of much commendation. Mr. Speaker, it is said, if agriculture goes wrong, nothing else will have a chance to go right in this country. We must take note of that. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, in 2019 and beyond, the Ministry will embark on a developmental agenda which contributes in a meaningful way to building resilience, advancing social development, and transforming our economy. Mr. Speaker, as stated by the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, in his presentation of the 2019 budget, the agriculture sector will see an injection of EC $145 million. This amount is broken down as follows. Sometimes you don't have to take everything the media says. You have to get the facts. Most of the time, you know how sensational the media could be. And they're looking for sensation all the time. So we have to get the facts, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, OECS Agriculture Competitiveness Project, AGRICOM, EC $12 million. This is funded by the World Bank and the government of Grenada. Climate Smart Agriculture, an Enterprise Development Project, SAEP, EC $38 million, funded by IFAD, CDB, and the government of Grenada. Mr. Speaker, the Kuwaiti Fund Agriculture Road Feeder Roads Project, $95 million, Mr. Speaker. And I know the farmers are listening. I know the farmers will be happy when they hear about the Feeder Roads Project, because I've been told over and over, we want to produce, but we need better access to our lands. Mr. Speaker, these investments will impact positively on the agriculture sector, and especially the rural areas of this country and beyond in 2019. Mr. Speaker, and you also heard, Minister for St. Patrick's West, when she spoke of the number of agricultural projects that will be taking place in our area. You heard about the Shambo, another set of monies that are being pumped into youth in agriculture in those areas. Mr. Speaker, the aforementioned investment will be complemented by the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands allocation of $16,754,318. Mr. Speaker, it must be stated that the Ministry's budgetary allocation for 2019 is 12.6% higher than that of 2018. Mr. Speaker, while I can identify with those who say that the ministry could have done more, and we know that, the ministry could do much, much more, I will assure you that the agriculture sector has progressed during the period under review. A lot of people don't see how this whole agriculture sector is unfolding with the changes that we are making. But it would unfold. In 2019, you will see more action than talk. Mr. Speaker, I am aware that much is expected of this ministry, and that the hopes, the dreams, and aspirations of the agriculture sector stakeholders depend to a large extent on the type of leadership and direction which we provide. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank the Honorable Prime Minister for the confidence which he has shown in my ability to lead this most important sector. Mr. Speaker, the agriculture sector continues to be an important contributor to Grenada's economy, providing sustainable livelihoods for thousands of Grenadians, especially for our sisters and brothers in the rural communities. Mr. Speaker, this sector is vital, and this government recognizes this, hence our commitment to put in real resources towards the further growth and development of this vital sector. Mr. Speaker, with this introduction, I want to turn your attention to the developments which took place within the sector at a national level to provide the context for the ministry's 2019 budget. Mr. Speaker, the agriculture sector's contribution to GDP was 5.1% in 2017 and is projected to increase to 5.6% in 2018. The traditional crop subsector, what is that? The traditional crop subsector, Mr. Speaker, cocoa and nutmeg, continues to be of major focus for this country, as it generates valuable foreign exchange earnings and provides sustainable livelihoods to many. Over the last 3 years, the Grenada Cocoa Association and the GCNA have been battling with depressed markets, Mr. Speaker, and a resulting tenuous financial position. However, given the superior quality of our cocoa and nutmegs, the association continued to attract premium prices. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, both associations have been able to secure new markets to hedge against price decreases in the traditional markets. Mr. Speaker, the GCNA recorded a slight decline in 2018, with production moving from 1.4 million pounds in 2017 to 1.14 million pounds in 2018. In spite of this decline in production, the GCNA was able to realize a surplus of EC $1.4 million. Mr. Speaker, the cost-sharing arrangements with the GCA have contributed significantly to this achievement. The real estate arm of the association continues to be a source of sustained revenues and helps with overall financial stability. The occupancy rate at the GCNA complex is 95% at the moment. Mr. Speaker, the GCNA completed minor upgrades to the Guave receiving station, and plans are afoot for a total transformation of that station. This upgrade will provide jobs for persons as shop assistants and tour guides. The association plans to make similar upgrades in the Grenville station to improve the visitors' experience and generate additional revenue. A lot of tourists continue to go to these stations, but they must be upgraded, and the service given there, from a tourist standpoint, it must be developed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I must emphasize that the ministry appreciates the ongoing dialogue on the various business models which could be considered for ensuring a sustainable financial future for the nutmeg and cocoa subsectors. A new and sustainable business model is an imperative, Mr. Speaker, because the market trends are not as promising and the industry has changed significantly over the last 70 years. Mr. Speaker, while I acknowledge that a change is extremely necessary, we must proceed cautiously so as to ensure that our farmers are protected. Therefore, I call on the farming community, the board of directors, and the management of the associations to support the ministry in its endeavor. Mr. Speaker, the GCA also recorded a slight decline in 2018, with production moving from 1.6 million pounds in 2017 to 1.5 million pounds in 2018. In 2018, the percentage of total cocoa sales realized in the regional market reached 10%, up from 1% in 2016. The decision taken by the GCA years ago to aggressively pursue value addition through chocolate production has allowed the association to navigate the rough, tough economic times over the last 3 years. Mr. Speaker, this year the factory has generated revenue in excess of $1.6 million. Mr. Speaker, the association has procured new equipment for producing milk chocolates, which will allow the association to expand production and generate greater revenues. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the GCA has acquired the building which is situated next to the chocolate factory. This building will be converted to a restaurant which will allow the association to expand its offerings to the visitors who tour its facilities. This new facility will generate additional revenue and create new jobs. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that the government has been playing a critical role in stabilizing these subsectors over the years through the provision of financial support, with the most recent being government's intervention to the GCA on a loan of $3.5 million. Mr. Speaker, it is no secret that the both associations have had their challenges over the years. As a matter of fact, a significant amount of research has been done and models proposed in the quest to improve the efficiency of these associations. It is well established that no organization can continue to operate in the same manner and expect different results. Therefore, if the associations are to improve efficiency, we must employ a different approach in the interest of our farmers and, by extension, the nation. Mr. Speaker, I believe a merger of the associations is feasible and can bring the desired results. However, the farmers are critical to process. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, a 7-member committee comprising directors of both boards were tasked with the engagement of all the farmers and subsequently report to the ministry. Mr. Speaker, critical to this process is the amendment of the ordinances. And quite a lot of work has started on that, Mr. Speaker, and will be finalized within the first quarter of 2019. Non-traditional exports. Mr. Speaker, the ministry continues to support the diversification of our export crop. In 2018, the crop which drove non-traditional export were golden apples, and I'm proud to report to this Honorable House that Grenada is again exporting golden apples to the United States of America. After losing this market more than 10 years ago, Mr. Speaker, in 2018, Grenada exported 270,000 pounds to the United States of America. Mr. Speaker, I congratulate the staff of the Ministry of Agriculture, and in particular the Pest Management Unit, and they are here, Mr. Speaker, for their hard work in this matter. I wish also to commend Mr. Nick Bernard for his hard work and the kind support that he has given to the sector. Soursop, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, soursop is being referred to as Grenada's gold, green gold. And the export figures for the last 3 years bears that out, Mr. Speaker. Production in 2018 was 1.7 million pounds, down from 2 million pounds last year. This decline, Mr. Speaker, can be attributed to farmers reducing or stopping production as a result of Pridia lasmi. Pest problems, low production. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry, in collaboration with FAO, started the implementation of an initiative to develop the soursop value chain in Grenada, where comprehensive market studies was developed with recommendations. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, the FAO will commence the second phase of this initiative. The ministry has allocated an additional $150,000 to implement some of the recommendations of the aforementioned market studies. Mr. Speaker, livestock subsector. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, the ministry focused attention on improving the local poultry industry. Because chicken imports moved from 11.8 million pounds, Mr. Speaker, in 2013 to 13.85 million pounds in 2017. Tell you the amount of chicken that we consume here in Grenada. Conversely, Mr. Speaker, local production has fallen from 1.6 million pounds in 2013 to 1.1 million pounds in 2018. That is serious room for concern. Mr. Speaker, Cabinet approved the poultry policy in 2017 and mandated the ministry to develop an action plan for policy implementation, in particular the target of supplying 40% of the market with local chicken. To achieve these targets, Mr. Speaker, we have conducted an assessment of the slaughtering capacity and the sanitary standards of the local processing facilities here in Grenada. We have commenced several consultations with major buyers who have expressed commitment to the goals of the policy. We have opened dialogue with Caribbean Agro Company Limited on price reduction on feed, poultry feed. Mr. Speaker, we have collaborated with ICA to conduct HACCP training for poultry producers in food safety and food handling. And we have started discussions, Mr. Speaker, with Gales Hatchery of Barbados about setting up a hatchery here in Grenada. Mr. Speaker, agro-processing subsector. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, the Produce Chemist Laboratory continued to provide critical support to this subsector, which employs an estimated 400 small and medium-sized entrepreneurs. The support provided included technical assistance to 393 agro-processors. We conducted 4,000 chemical and microbiological analyses. We conducted 4 technical workshops for mainly youth and women, Mr. Speaker. We conducted 72 agro-processing site visits. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, the Produce Chemist Lab will focus on the first phase of the Sagazam seaweed fertilizer project with a budgetary allocation of $100,000. Pest and disease management, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, the Pest Management Unit has focused its attention on the dreaded citrus greening disease that has been affecting throughout the Caribbean, Mr. Speaker, and here in Grenada in particular, our citrus cultivations. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, the unit has undertaken the following measures to begin addressing the disease. The training of 30 farmers, a national symposium on citrus greening. This symposium was hosted in collaboration with ICA. And I see Mr. Derek Charles here. I just want to recognize him. Citrus greening specialists from Jamaica and St. Vincent facilitated the symposium. I want to thank ICA specialists. I want to thank Dr. King and also our local specialist, Mr. Derek Charles, for moving so swiftly. Because when Mr. John came to Grenada, we spoke about it, and I said this is something that is really affecting the farmers. And lo and behold, in a couple of months' time, we were able to get this symposium together so that people would get a better understanding of the whole citrus greening situation that we have and how we can move. You know, what are the things that we can do to really, you know, get this program going, how we can help the farmers to control the citrus greening. The resumption of citrus plant propagation, the improving of farm management on each farm, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, investment and concessions. The Grenada Cane Company, CaneCo. Mr. Speaker, the investment made by CaneCo has been very impactful on the agriculture sector and the national economy as a whole. Mr. Speaker, since commencing operations in Grenada 18 months ago, CaneCo has invested $6.37 million, spent $1.2 million on wages and salaries, paid out $231,990 in leases, provided employment for 90 persons, leased 183 acres, and operate another 27 acres on farm management contracts, a total of 210 acres. Mr. Speaker, in October of 2018, CaneCo started construction of the distillery facility in Conference, St. Andrews. $10 million will be spent on this facility. Mr. Speaker, and I always want to recognize the efforts of Alexandra Otway. When Alex spoke to me about this project, I really didn't believe. I said, Lord, that's another. And I mean, I'm very, very, happy to know that this project has unfolded. We have revolutionized cane in Grenada. Every backyard now wants to get into a contract with CaneCo to get cane going in Grenada. And I think that's a plus for us. And I, want to applaud the efforts of the organizers, those who have done the negotiation in the very early part of this project. CaneCo has benefited from concessions as well. Such a large project, we must support this entity with concessions. Mr. Speaker, from the outset, the ministry has collaborated closely with CaneCo, and we will continue to do so in the coming years. Mr. Speaker, permit me to share with this Honorable House a significant investment that is made in the form of concessions and duty waivers. In 2018, 30 farmers received concessions on 4x4 vehicles. The total revenue forgone by government was $900,000. 55 stakeholders received concessions on vital agricultural inputs, totaling approximately $750,000. This, Mr. Speaker, shows the level of commitment by this government to the agriculture sector. Mr. Speaker, improving productive infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, the ministry put resources towards improving the propagation stations. To improve the working condition of the workers and to increase output at the stations. These stations continue to produce to meet the propagation needs of our stakeholders. A total of 40,115 plants were produced between January and October of 2018. This is 5% higher than what was produced over the same period last year. Mr. Speaker, under the Japan-Caribbean Climate Change Partnership, significant work was done at Mirabo Station. A new water storage system with a capacity of 33,000 gallons is in its final stage of construction, and our shade house capacity will be enhanced with the installation of 2 new shade houses, complete with irrigation systems in a matter of weeks. Capacity building. Mr. Speaker, in order to provide greater service to our farmers, the ministry has developed a multidisciplinary approach to the delivery of extension services. This approach will be phased in. We started implementation in November in the Southern District and with a wider rollout plan for the new year. Mr. Speaker, I saw the need for that because when I came into the ministry and I went to visit some of the farmers, I was disappointed in some of the remarks made by the farmers. Sometimes all of it is not true. You can know when it's true and when it's not true. But Mr. Speaker, I went to a particular farm with a team of persons. And I saw these sweet peppers and these things were wilting. And I said, my goodness, that's a lot of stuff here, you know, and they're wilting, this person's going to have losses. But the person that went along with me, the extension person, had the skills, you know. They knew exactly what had happened to these sweet peppers. They were able to rattle out in the mouth that this is what and whatever disease, and what is it to be done to it. So, Mr. Speaker, right away I knew that we had to push some new method of how we organize the extension program through the communities, and so we embarked on this program. Mr. Speaker, as part of the ministry's trust, capacity building and succession planning, 20 extension assistants have commenced management of shade houses, greenhouses for vegetable production, establishing and management of irrigation systems for small-scale agriculture, soilless culture, pest and disease management of crops. Mr. Speaker, we believe this can be used as a roadmap to future training. Mr. Speaker, despite the immense adverse effects of pre-deer larceny offenses against the agriculture sector, there has been a noticeable reduction in reports from 786 made in 2017 to 478 made in 2018. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, 92 arrests were made and brought before the court. Of these, 27 offenders were sentenced and 40 persons were settled, matters were settled out of court. And the other 25, Mr. Speaker, remain under investigations. Mr. Speaker, a significant number of reports have centered around soursop, stealing of soursop, citrus, and avocado. Police investigations concluded that farmers, listen to this, farmers and exporters were the main culprits, depriving other farmers depriving other farmers in this regard, Mr. Speaker. And you know, that is a big sin. Because if a farmer, that is a bigger sin than the ordinary sins. Because if a farmer could thief from another farmer, I mean, come on. Farming is not an easy thing, you know. It's hard work. And if a farmer could watch another person's farm in the night sneaking on the farm and steal all of it, I mean, come on. This person is serious trouble. Lord would never forgive them. Mr. Speaker, the government has allocated $300,000 towards arresting this very vexing problem in 2019. And I'm happy to hear when the minister and the parliamentary rep for St. Patrick's East spoke about the Shambo project and trying to change the lives of these young people, you know, giving them an opportunity to develop their own farm so they would not go and interfere with other farms. Well, we hope so, but that will be part of the counseling that they would receive also from the parliamentary rep, I suppose. The Farm Labor Support Project, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is something that all farmers are waiting to hear. And there's always concern about this farm labor program. Mr. Speaker, the ministry continues to play an integral role in the expansion of tree crop cultivation while providing temporary employment for individuals in the rural communities. The following occurred under the program. Over 100 farmers were assisted in the farm labor program, Mr. Speaker. Over 80 acres of green tree crop has been established, Mr. Speaker. 182 persons obtained short-term employment, Mr. Speaker, in this program. We can do much more, Mr. Speaker, with this program. I think, and I know that next year we must merge our efforts with GCNA and GCA because sometimes they're doing the same thing. So we must merge our efforts and come up with a fully comprehensive program that can take in the farmers and look at the production side. What is it we really want to do? For example, soursop. How we can develop on that. How we can give that crop that level of support. So we hope to do that, Mr. Speaker, next year. Meet with the two entities again and see how we can work up a more comprehensive program. Because, you know, we need to get more farmers involved. We need to assist more farmers in ensuring that they produce more, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Ashenden Propagation Station also received some support under that program. We have cleared 2 acres of land there. We have opened up 450 feet of drains, trimming of 250 feet of windbreak. Mr. Speaker, the lands that we have cleared in Ashenden will be used to establish a new germplasm for exotic crops. Mr. Speaker, the ministry continues to struggle to provide efficient farm machinery support. In 2018, 189 hours of land preparation services were provided. The ministry set up a committee to look at the commercialization of the farm machinery unit. Mr. Speaker, an initial report on the commercialization was submitted to the ministry. This report will be sent to Cabinet for review and direction before the end of the year. Mr. Speaker, agriculture risk insurance. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to report that Cabinet has approved the payment of over $200,000 to the farmers affected by the torrential rain of August 1st, 2018 in St. David's and part of the south of the island. Mr. Speaker, recognizing the vulnerability of the sector, the ministry is continues to collaborate with FAO to pursue an agriculture crop insurance for farmers in Grenada. Mr. Speaker, this is a regional project, and we have done our bit. In May of this year, a team of insurance experts from the FAO conducted a scoping mission to determine its feasibility. The FAO will conduct a second mission in January 2019 to meet the stakeholders and formulate a plan of action for going forward. Mr. Speaker, we hope to see the fruition of this project in 2019. Mr. Speaker, land use and land and surveys. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to inform this Honorable House that the LIDAR topographical survey was delivered to the Government of Grenada in August of 2018. Training in the application of LIDAR survey data for climate change, disaster risk management, and physical planning was delivered to 30 technical officers from varying entities. Having the data locally, Mr. Speaker, available has allowed the government to save substantial monies The data can be used during the development of projects for the building of new schools, road construction, coastal rehabilitation, and other private investments projects. The LIDAR topographical survey, Mr. Speaker, is also used for climate change, disaster risk management, and the physical planning issues. So this is a very, very important piece of document that we have. We have to, Mr. Speaker, be careful, or we have to make sure we use it wisely, and I know it will be beneficial to a lot of persons who, you know, and we are offering a fee, Mr. Speaker. This is not free, you know. We'll be offering a fee for those entities, the private entities and so, who wants the data to do business and development. Mr. Speaker, the draft Grenada National Policy, land policy, is completed by the consultant, and it will be sent to Cabinet for review and approval in early 2019. Mr. Speaker, sometimes we shortchange ourselves, you know, in this little beautiful Grenada. When I travel to these meetings, Mr. Speaker, overseas, Grenada is always ahead. We are always ahead. You all need to knock the table down. I'll begin. Mr. Speaker, I just came from 2 important meetings. In Barbados, Agriculture Week, and I went to the ISLM meeting in Guyana. And when we report on our activities, we are way ahead. We are way ahead of things. And I want to applaud the efforts of those officers and the people who work and who take things seriously in the Ministry of Agriculture for moving these things forward, these activities, this program, this project forward. We are always ahead. We are ahead with our land policy, draft land policy. We are ahead with this LIDAR survey. We are ahead with the testing of our soils and all of that, and to, you know, a number of projects we are ahead in. Mr. Speaker, the installation of the geodetic network, which allows surveyors to prepare plans using geographic positions and commissions of rainwater harvesting systems, is being installed at Maribor Propagating Station and MacDonald College. Mr. Speaker, the soil mapping and fertility project funded by the Kingdom of Morocco is nearing completion. You may have heard me speak about this, giving you an update on what has taken place with this project. To date, Mr. Speaker, the following has been done. 1,404 soil samples were taken across the entire country and sent to the lab testing, for lab testing and analysis. $345,000 was expended, with a further $115,000 over the next 6 months. Mr. Speaker, farmers will know the fertility of their soils throughout Grenada. They will know what quantities of fertilizer to use in their soils. They may not have to use fertilizer because of the fertility of their soil. They can also know what crops to grow. Remember, Mr. Speaker, we are looking at moving to healthy foods. We have to move in that direction. We are putting too much fertilizers in our food. I bought some tomatoes last week, and by Monday morning, the thing went right down flat. A solid tomato in my hand became a watery tomato in my hand. So we have to be serious. This program, Mr. Speaker, this soil mapping and fertility project testing, this project, Mr. Speaker, would really open the eyes of the farmers so they can do things the right way. They can put the right amount of, nothing wrong with putting a little fertilizer, but you have to know the amount. You have to know the type of fertilizer to use, and this project, Mr. Speaker, is a plus. This is a serious plus for the Ministry of Agriculture and also for the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. We have to start feeding our nation with healthy foods. And the parliamentary fronts would tell you, and we're coming up with that. This is where we're going to really talk more about the nation and agree in the two parliamentary the fronts, agreeing on healthy lifestyles, stop zero approach to hunger and all of that. Mr. Speaker, I want to express my gratitude to the Kingdom of Morocco for funding the most important initiative, this most important initiative. Mr. Speaker, the FAO-funded Land Bank project would allow for a greater pooling of land resources, some of which can be accessed by those wanting to lease lands for agricultural production. Cabinet has assigned 100,000 acres of lands in Diamond St. Mark and Grand Bacolet St. Andrews. The ministry has committed a further $150,000 to support the operationalization of this land bank project. Mr. Speaker, the focus of the Land and Survey Division over the last few years has been to effectively and efficiently manage Crown lands. We have how much lands in Grenada again, you know. And if we don't manage these lands, Mr. Speaker, we're going to end up with no lands at all. Mr. Speaker, also to stop the ad hoc occupation of government lands, which results in squatter settlement. People are squatting everywhere. We have to put a hold on that. And I speak to my colleagues all the time, because we are the ones that have to really brace that opportunity and make sure that we manage these well. Because people come to us for lands all the time. I sit in my office and every day, every Wednesday, 10, 14 people come for land. When you ask the question, oh, I want to break out of my house, I want to break out of my mother's house, and these are things. We have to start planning how we're going to utilize the lands in our country. People cannot keep getting a house and a piece of land. We don't have lands. We may have to build condominiums, we have to build apartments and these sorts of things. We have to move in that direction. Our young people have to understand that. Mr. Speaker, the management of the accounts for sales and leases of government lands. Mr. Speaker, for the period June to November 2018, government collected $964,223.12 for the sale of lands. For the period for the same period, $763,866.64 were collected as rent for leases. That is chicken feed, you know. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the information that is filed in the Ministry of Agriculture, we could run this country, you know. The finances coming out of that, if we have proper structures in place, Mr. Speaker, we could run this country. We could give the ministers some help in their constituencies to do some of the projects. Mr. Speaker, the aforementioned amounts represent a small percentage of what is due to government. In 2019, the division will be more efficient and effective in the collection of revenue owed to government for the sale and leases of government lands. Mr. Speaker, 2019 focus. The focus areas of the ministry in 2019 budget fits within the context of government's medium-term agenda, which enunciates the strategic development objectives for the period 2019 to 2021. Mr. Speaker, the ministry's priorities support the achievement of strategic pillar 1 and 2, which are 1, accelerating sustainable and inclusive economic growth. 2, enhancing social capital and citizens' well-being. Permit me, Mr. Speaker, to lay out the ministry's major priority areas for 2019. 1, developing a pathway for succession planning, realigning our HR needs for more effective service delivery. 2, building stakeholder capacity. 3, developing the livestock subsector, small ruminants, poultry, pigs, and bees. And I know the Minister for Carriacou would be happy to know that we'll be looking at Carriacou for small ruminants development in that area. Expanding tree crop cultivation, improving pest and disease management, strengthening producers' organizations, mainstreaming climate-smart agriculture, increasing youth participation in agriculture, strengthening public relations, improving data collection and usage, strengthening research and development, and increasing revenue collection. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry, in collaboration with its developmental partners, will implement a series of interventions which will support the priority list above. Permit me to mention two of these. Youth in Agriculture project. Mr. Speaker, this project has a total cost of $2.6 million. However, the ministry has allocated $300,000 to commence its implementation. These funds will be used to train 75 young persons in agro-processing, small ruminants rearing, and fish processing. The trainees will also receive material and technical assistance to help with the startup of their businesses. Mr. Speaker, it must be noted that we have received a commitment of support by the FAO for the implementation of this project, $2.6 million. We are working closely with the Ministry of Youth to get this project on foot in 2019. Also, Mr. Speaker, in 2019, the ministry intends to use the 4-H movement to spur youth involvement in agriculture, which will be supported by SAIC through the mobilization efforts of its new members. In 2018, Mr. Speaker, I must speak about the 4-H movement, because that is where the young people get an idea or a grip of what agriculture is all about in the schools. In 2018, the 4-H movement mobilized the participation of 98 4-H leaders and 1,088 4-H members in its activities. Reactivated 2 clubs, started 3, thus recruiting 394 members. Mr. Speaker, this movement was instrumental in the successful implementation of the agriculture component of the Zero Hunger Initiative in the 4 pilot schools. Having assessed the lessons learned from that project, Mr. Speaker, the ministry is looking forward to a phased rollout of this initiative. What the ministry is doing now is speaking with the private sector so that we can have support from the private sector. FAO helped us with the setting up of the project and bringing it to a certain level. We are now working with the private sector to support for this project moving forward. We already have support from Huggins, who have supported the St. Michael's School in Minister Thomas's area. Mr. Speaker, so this is where we're going to roll out the project in 2019. Mr. Speaker, Agricom project, World Bank Agricom project. Mr. Speaker, the government of Grenada has received financing in the amount of $4 million, $2.2 million, Credit International Development Association for the implementation of the OECS Regional Tourism Competitiveness Project, Agricom. Mr. Speaker, the proposed project development objective of Agricom is to enhance access to markets and sales of competitively selected farmers and fishers, as well as the allied aggregators and agro-processors in Grenada. Mr. Speaker, after some initial setbacks, the project is finally moving forward and full implementation will be realized in early 2019. We're ready to go with it. Mr. Speaker, just to mention a little about the abattoir, I know my time is coming and I have my constituency here and in full swing up there, and they wouldn't want that I not speak about. I mean, I have the ministry here too. I have my team. I have the full team from the ministry here. All my heads are here. But knowing my PS, as I'm getting to know him a little more, I know he would have left a skeleton staff at the ministry. You can't have the whole ministry here. I know he left back. He put some structure in place to accommodate all of us here today. But I'm very pleased and I'm very happy to see everybody here. Just to touch a little bit on the abattoir is up and running, but there are a lot of work still to be done with the abattoir. It is referred to as a state-of-the-art abattoir. When our ICA representative came in, he said, my goodness gracious, Minister, you have a great abattoir here. You just have to have a good management structure and run this thing efficiently. And so we're moving in this direction. And also we have to look at all the other things that have to connect to the abattoir. It's not just the abattoir up there, but all the other persons that are killing animals all in the little crevices and corners of Grenada. We're looking at food safety, Mr. Speaker. And if we don't get it right, we're going to be back in the same corner that we are. So later on in 2019, we're going to look at the legislation. We're going to look at all the people who are killing animals all around and see how we can work with a system to accommodate them and make sure that we have our Grenadian people eating healthy meats. Mr. Speaker, I wish at this point to congratulate Silver Sands Hotel on the opening of this new hotel, Mr. Speaker. See? And also for the support given to the farmers. I also want to commend Grenrop under the leadership of Teresa Marichaux for the arrangements made with Silver Sands. Mr. Speaker, they have offered much hope for farmers and agro-processors. You see, these huge hotels, they do not want to deal with individual farmers. All they want is to get what they need to supply to their clients. So Ms. Teresa Marichaux, Grenrop, is acting as the middle person who is linking with the farmers. They don't want problems. All they want is a watermelon and this and that on the table, the pumpkin and all that. So she is like the middleman who collects all this stuff from the different farmers. And, over 123 farmers. And agro-processors can access lucrative markets for their produce. The ministry will seek to forge greater synergy with Grenrop as we strive to secure more markets for our farmers. I want to applaud her efforts, Mr. Speaker. And maybe we'll have to sit with her more and put a good structure in place to help her to sustain this whole thing. And so we'll look at that in 2019, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our people are also speaking with Silver Sands. So our poultry department is speaking with Silver Sands as well to ensure that we get the poultry farmers get that level of support too. Not only Silver Sands is involved in this project, I want to also say that Sandals have started the process long before, but they're all coming together now and to work. And we hope that all the hotels eventually, when you walk into a hotel, you would not see anything foreign on the plate in a hotel. That is the move from the farm to the plate. But our farmers must produce. They must produce in a timely manner. They have to come together and work together. So when Jill doesn't have tomatoes, Jack could give her the tomatoes. And when Boson cannot supply the cucumbers or the pumpkin, Tobias could do that. So they have to come together. They have to work as a team to ensure that we can supply our Grenadian people and our tourists that come into Ireland with the right foods, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I close, Mr. Speaker, I wish to remind all that the future of the agriculture sector depends on sustainable approaches to farming. Our farmers are our biggest investment, Mr. Speaker. With EC, $145 million devoted to a better feeder roads access, climate-smart agricultural practices, and increased markets. We can't go wrong. We can't go wrong with that kind of budget we have this year, Mr. Speaker. And it's not just this year, the budget, we have had some measure of these monies, but because they are located in different ministries, the farmers and persons out there do not get the understanding unless we articulate that understanding so they can really get a hold of what is happening. Mr. Speaker, this is a testimony of the ministry's commitment to give farmers and agro-processors the confidence they need to guard their investment in the sector. It is my desire that our farmers will embrace the opportunity to do things differently. Climate change is a reality. We see it happening every single day. When I get up in the morning, I'm not sure what time it is any longer. It's either dark or the sun or something, or rain falling whole time. You don't know what to do. You cannot plan. But we have to start preparing for climate change. And especially our farmers. Not only our farmers, all of us have to start preparing. Because our farmers are calling us too. When something happens, we have to run. So we have to prepare for these reality changes that is coming to our doorstep. You must help us to build resilience in the sector. Farmers, you have more than the ability to make a difference. Indeed, you are the difference. I encourage you to work smarter by practicing climate-smart agriculture. We're working too hard. There are certain practices that we can employ in our structure that we can do things differently. When I look at the training that the Chinese have given us, that organization that came in, I mean, this is smart agriculture. You don't have to. You have to look at how things are moving now and the times that we are in. The future of agriculture depends on you. The future of this nation depends on you. A nation that can feed its people, Mr. Speaker, can certainly say yes to building resilience, advancing social development, and transforming our economy. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me if I don't say something about my staff and the people who supported me. I owe the staff of the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands much gratitude for the support and collaboration throughout the year. To the Permanent Secretary, our new Permanent Secretary, who is right behind me, sitting right behind me, he's checking up in case I forgot something, who recently came to the ministry, has been working tirelessly, Mr. Speaker, trying to put structures in place. And, this is an area that I always have a problem when structures are not in place. So I'm feeling much, much more comfortable. Mr. Speaker, to many of the officers who, despite the odds, remain committed to the ministry's focus. Mr. Paul, Del Sololihes, Thompson, to name a few, our new doctor. There are those among you who walked your way into the night and into the early morning. I wish to recognize your efforts. My secretary, the secretaries who stay all late hours in the night. Sometimes when I call, my secretary said, I'm still in the ministry. And I say, my goodness gracious, your spirit of advancing the vision of the bigger picture. I am moved by your passion, and I'm certainly and eternally grateful. Mr. Speaker, I want to, at this point in time, extend my sympathy to the family of Mr. Irvin Alexander, a worker at Boulong Estate, and all the workers at the estate. Mr. Alexander died a couple days ago. These are hard-working, poor people on the estate, Mr. Speaker. And I really, really want to, reach out to the family and let them know, that we sympathize with their loss. Mr. Speaker, there are members of staff who died during the year, and also members of staff, and also family members of staff. There are also members of staff who are sick in bed. I visited a young lady who had worked all her years in the ministry. She took an operation, and up to now she cannot walk. My heart goes out to them. It has been a very tough year for the ministry. Mr. Speaker, there are many organizations and institutions that have made and continue to make significant contributions to the ministry's effort towards attaining national food and nutrition security. And they are worthy of much recognition here, Mr. Speaker, this morning. The FAO, my goodness. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, but a big ministry like that.
Just proceed. You have 15 minutes
more.
The
FAO and Agriculture Organization, Mr. Speaker, ICA, CARDI, the Grenada Corporate Nutmeg Association, GCA, the Chinese Agricultural Technical Mission, the International Organization for Agriculture Development, IFAD, the Caribbean Development Bank, the Marketing and International Board, the University of the West Indies, Windfresh, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean Commission, the United States Department for Agriculture, USDA, the World Bank, the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, Center for Agriculture and Bioscience, CARBI, Caribbean Agriculture, Health and Food Safety Authority, CAFSA, and the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology, CIMH, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank these organizations. I want to thank all of you here, and I now move to the most important, I would say, because these are the people who have me in this parliament today. And I'm very happy to see them here in full numbers. My full staff is here. Who is in my office? I hope in Grendon. I have to find out that. Mr. Speaker, housing still remains a priority in St. Andrews Southwest. Mr. Speaker, and you know, I listened to my sister there, Sister Pamela, when she spoke about her visit. She was in the school all the time, and she never had the opportunity to go to the constituency. And when I heard her spoke of all the things that have awakened her, I said, welcome to the table, girl. Because, I mean, community work is not easy work. That is where you get you feel gratified that you have done something to help someone. Mr. Speaker, over 60 households are under the SEED program. So far this year, 53 households were placed on the SEED program in St. Andrews Southwest. On the housing, 46 persons was approved for material this year. 22 persons received material so far. 21 persons are approved and waiting the materials from the hardware. 3 persons were given grants. Over 300 applicants in file waiting to be selected. Over $210,000 was spent on housing in St. Andrews Southwest. Mr. Speaker, Golden Years. I must mention this Golden Years program because it's my baby. Mr. Speaker, this is a center where we have 35 seniors there, Mr. Speaker. Some of them we have had more, but some of them died. We have 6 caregivers. Every Wednesday they meet up at this center where they can talk and laugh and they can have a meal, reminisce over the old years, the days when they had great love affairs, some of them told me, and when things were really, they were enjoying life. Mr. Speaker, that is the facts of life, Mr. Speaker. These are the facts of life. This is what makes people happy. This is what makes people happy, and the quicker we get to know that, the happier we will be. Mr. Speaker, there are 3 major events: a beach outing, tea, fashion and talent, and an open day, Mr. Speaker, where these people recreate and they enjoy. The open day, anybody can visit and talk and laugh with them. We have the young persons doing their nails and making them look pretty, combing their hair sometimes at these open days. Mr. Speaker, on Sunday, they're having a tea and fashion, and all are invited. It starts at 3 o'clock on the Granborough Court. Mr. Speaker, the bushing. And I heard again, my friend here, Minister, spoke about the debushing. Mr. Speaker, 255 contracts were given to date. That's 1,785 persons receiving a fortnight work. Another 83 persons were employed as supervisors. Mr. Speaker, environmental wardens. I must commend this program. It's a program I think that is doing very well, because where the debushing people do not touch at all, the environmental wardens are touching those areas and keeping the place intact. Mr. Speaker, we have 5 teams consisting of 3 men and 3 women working along in St. Andrews Southwest areas, cleaning drains, trimming overhangings, cutlassing, and keeping the areas of our community safe, clean, and beautiful. If you look at Gladstone Road, we have a young team working in that road, and you know, you can now relax when you're going down with your car and you look at how the ambience of the place has been transformed. Mr. Speaker, one person looks over the team, a supervisor. Education, over 20 persons at SU, TAMCC, and overseas students receive school assistance in the amount of $60,000. 12 students received assistance in paying CXC exam fees amounting to $4,800. 250 households received help from the school vouchers program. Approximately 1,200 students benefited. Mr. Speaker, the Imani trainees. Over 250 persons from St. Andrews Southwest are placed in the new Imani program from batch 1 to 5. 75 more young persons are placed in batch 6, and 30 of them are young persons in the Empower program. I want to applaud the efforts of the Ministry of Youth, and I want to stress that the Empower program has changed or is having an awakening effect on these young persons who are sitting on the block and doing nothing. I have approached the young men in Trenchtown and I've seen certain changes in their lifestyles. We have a lot more work to do with them, but they are working now, they are doing something with their lives, they feel more valuable, they feel that they are more important now and their lives are changing, Mr. Speaker. So I want to applaud the efforts of moving this project forward. Mr. Speaker, brigades. The House Brigade built 3 houses and repaired 7 houses. At Ford Preschool, they built a support base for a water tank and installed the tank. The Skill Brigade, they have completed 4 toilets and bath and 4 waiting to be completed. Mr. Speaker, 90 feet of box drain was done in Mount St. Ovens to control water from the main road that was causing damage to a private property. 45 feet of wall and 90 feet of slipper drain was done in Ladig Main Road to protect property as well. 110 feet of box drain was done on the Gladstone Road to control the massive flow of water. 30 feet of box drain and 35 feet of slipper drain at Catstein. 116 feet of box drain is in progress at Tilleries, Mr. Speaker. And when I heard Minister for South, the MP for South speak of drains, I said to myself, we're on the same page, because if we don't put proper drainage, it's useless doing roads. Okay, so in some areas we do it because we see there is no danger. But, Mr. Speaker, this is what we have been doing. So next year now, the roads would unfold and where the drains have been placed. Mr. Speaker, 3 completed toilets and bath at Union, Tilleries, Pleasant, and St. Andrews for 3 senior citizens. 24 feet of railing for a senior citizen who has problem with her vision, Mr. Speaker. Railing for the bridge. Mr. Speaker. All of the above, $126,000 have been spent on these small projects, Mr. Speaker. Asphalt. And I want to thank the Minister for Works for the asphalt that was done on the road in Harford Village, down to Cook Hill Road, Tilleries, Mount Carmel, Munich, and Ladig, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, very often we don't thank the Ministry of Works, We always complaining, road, holding the road all over the place. But they did an excellent job, and they need to be commended. Mr. Speaker, future developments. Mr. Speaker, 6 special projects are now awaiting the Ministry of Works approval to start. 220 feet of slipper drain to be done at Munich. The building of the Holy Cross School, Mr. Speaker, that school has cost $5.4 million. It's almost completed. We are hoping very early in January to open that school, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the water development project in Munich, a long overdue project. This project would be unfolding soon. 60% of that project will be done by NAWASA, their financial input, 40% by BNTF. $600,000 would be spent on this project in Munich. Mr. Speaker, the Munich people would be smiling when they get this project done, because a lot of houses have been built in Munich over the years, and they are using the same small tank or whatever to get the water. So this project, this extension program, will do a lot of justice to the people of Munich and surrounding areas. Also, the expansion of the playing field on the old school ground in Munich will be developed. The light up of the palms playing field. The lights are installed already. We just have to put the program together now. How are we going to operate the installation, the system in Birch Grove and in Union. Both areas are installed, and we think these are really areas that we need to have the lighting. That's why we chose these two areas, because of the number of activities that take place in those areas. 5 toilet and bath to be constructed. Some of the materials are already being sourced. A number of muddy gaps are identified for development, and the Union bleachers to be developed, Mr. Speaker. These are the projects that are in, and we hope that very early or even before the end of the year, we can start some of those. Mr. Speaker, medical assistance, person was given medical assistance with CT scans, theater fees, dialysis, medication, ultrasound, etc., to the tune of $14,500. 4 persons was given assistance with water connections to a tune of $2,100. Electricity, Mr. Speaker, we have had a number of streetlights installed just last week. I wasn't even aware of it. We asked for those streetlights to be installed, but when persons called my home to tell me thank you, there's a lady from the Blando called to say thank you. They have the streetlight now. They won't be, bouncing their toe at night. People in Pleasance have called me as well to say that they have their streetlights now. So I really want to thank, the electricity company and the Ministry of Works for ensuring that, Mr. Speaker. We have helped also some needy persons with electrical connection. Those are persons who have 8 and 9 children in their home and they have no electricity. They use the streetlights most of the time to do their homework, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these are some of the projects that we've done. But for the new year, we're going to focus a lot on training. We're going to focus a lot on how we're going to utilize these community centers to bring more training and education to the people, because the CCJ is a perfect example. We can use these centers to educate persons more, and so they can know, they have the knowledge and they have information on what is happening in Grenada and in the world. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my constituents. They are all here. These are the people that rove with me wherever I go. Look at them right here. Everywhere I go, if I just call, pick up my phone and I say, I have something today, you bet your bottom dollar they will be there. They're reaching before me and all. Coming today here, my phone rang since around 6 o'clock. My phone has been ringing. I heard that you're speaking today, but nobody can tell me, how could I get a bus? How could I get transport? And some of them are here, Mr. Speaker, and I want to commend them. I want to thank them. They give me the support. They give me the reason to continue in this political arena, because it's not an easy thing. It's not something, as people think, is something that is a bed of roses. It's not at all. It's hard work and dedication. 4 o'clock in the morning, a man called me. 4 o'clock. When I look at the time, my husband says, what's going on, Yolan? When I look at the time, 4 o'clock, the man said to me, listen to him. This year was just going to time ago, and I'm trying to reach you for weeks, and I can't get you. That is the life we live, Mr. Speaker. That is the kind of life. This is a politician's life, Mr. Speaker. And today, I really, really, want to thank you all, those of you who came out today. No, sometimes, a little humor is good for the soul. If we're not laughing in our lives, if we are all too serious, and we're not laughing, taking time to laugh and enjoy life, you're going to see us in the next few years. We mightn't be around. So, Mr. Speaker, on this note, I want to thank all of you for coming out. I thank you for the support. I thank my ministry who has given me full support. In hard times and tough times, they came up with solutions, Mr. Speaker. There are those that work harder than others. And I want to appeal to those who are still struggling behind, whether they want to do so much work or not. I want them to follow suit. The level of work that some of my staff has given me. I also want to commend, and look at now, I've seen Mr. Joshua there. I want to congratulate Joshua. Joshua has been backing that poultry movement for years, and I want to recognize his efforts. Give Jack. Will you say it again? His jacket. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You're not going? This thing I'm okay? It's not coming off. Come on, get it off. Wait, something stuck. Yeah. Maybe I speak too much.
government pension. What are the facts? Are all public workers entitled to pension? Are public workers owed gratuity? Here are the facts. Fact 1. The Pension Disqualification Act of 1983 was validated on April 21, 1985 by the democratically elected government, led by former Prime Minister Herbert A. Blaize. This means that public workers employed after February 22, 1985 are not legally entitled to a pension from the government of Grenada. Fact 2. The judgment in the Hermelin Armstrong case does not create legal precedents for the reinstatement of pension to public workers employed after February 22, 1985. The judgment created a legal precedent only for those workers who joined the public service in a pensionable post between April 4, 1983 and February 22, 1985. There were 56 such workers. The government restored pension to those 56 workers in 2018 at a cost of $7.7 million. Fact 3. All officers employed in a pensionable post who joined the service after February 20.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise like my previous colleagues to give my unreserved support to the estimates of revenue and expenditure presented to this Honorable House by the Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, this $1.3 billion budget provides both relief and hope to all sectors. Mr. Speaker, we can all look forward to the new year, where more ordinary people will be impacted by the progressive policies of this government. Mr. Speaker, I applaud this package because, Mr. Speaker, of the projections for more growth, the projections for future reduction of unemployment, the projection for more assistance for housing, the projection for more spending and support for education, and the projection for more support to the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, whom I serve. Mr. Speaker, this budget is not about the figures contained therein, as impressive as they are, but rather it is about the lives that have been touched and the lives that will be touched. Mr. Speaker, I am proud to support this budget because real people in communities throughout Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique will be positively affected. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate, and I'm certain that all of us here appreciate, that there is a lot more to be done. But what I know, Mr. Speaker, is that more people are better off today than they were last year, and more people will be better off next year than they were this year. Mr. Speaker, I'll begin, of course, with the Ministry of Carriacou and Petite Martinique Affairs. This ministry, Mr. Speaker, plays a critical and vital role in the governance as to what happens within Carriacou and Petite Martinique. And, Mr. Speaker, we remain steadfast in our mission to enhance and improve the way of life of every citizen, every kayak, every Petit Martinican, by delivering, Mr. Speaker, professional and quality, timely services to all. Mr. Speaker, the mission and the vision of this ministry is to be an efficient ministry with well-trained and productive staff that contributes to a high quality of life for all the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. And Mr. Speaker, when I say all the people, I mean all the people. Whether or not you are black, you are white, you are yellow, you are green, you are purple, you are orange. We are here to serve all the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Mr. Speaker, for this fiscal year, the allocation was increased, Mr. Speaker, from $13.9 million to $14.3 million. This is an increase of $373,960 to be exact. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to be honest. We're expecting a little bit more. But, Mr. Speaker, we are still grateful and thankful for all that God has blessed us with and all that God will bless us with in 2019 and beyond. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, the Ministry of Carriacou and Petit Martinique and local government is accountable for 6 different divisions and is subdivided into numerous units. We also facilitate other ministries, including the Ministry of Health, for which, Mr. Speaker, we have a memorandum of understanding, and the Ministry of Education. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, this ministry, the Ministry of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, has oversight of all government operations in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. So, Mr. Speaker, it is a large and extensive ministry. So, Mr. Speaker, it wouldn't be surprising if I ask for additional time. Mr. Speaker, I want to begin with the Agriculture Division within the Ministry of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. And, Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the work done by this ministry, and by extension within Carriacou and Petit Martinique, this division must be highly commended. Agriculture, Mr. Speaker, is one of our priority areas of government and is an area that we focus greatly as part of our midterm strategic agenda, particularly, Mr. Speaker, youth in agriculture. Mr. Speaker, in keeping with my government's decision to encourage young men and women in agriculture, this year alone, the Food Security Program focused on men and young people in agriculture. And in this regard, Mr. Speaker, over 15 persons, that is, women and young budding farmers in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, received much needed assistance under this program. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, over 50 plus persons in Carriacou and Petit Martinique received small grants and other assistance through the just concluded MAREP project. Mr. Speaker, cassava growing and farine production increased this year in Carriacou. Mr. Speaker, it was not enough for local consumption. And, of course, what we did, Mr. Speaker, this year, the Agriculture Division tripled its planting acreage in the Dumfries area. And we also did likewise, Mr. Speaker, at the Bel-Air estate. Seedling production, Mr. Speaker, at the Bel-Air nursery increased by more than 50%. As a result of that, Mr. Speaker, farmers now visit that station very regularly to purchase much needed seedlings and other plants. Mr. Speaker, the livestock station is now under rehabilitation. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, it is well on its way to complete restoration after many years of uncertainty. This is something, Mr. Speaker, I am very proud about. Mr. Speaker, recently we received over a dozen hybrid sheep from Grenada. This, Mr. Speaker, was in an effort to increase our livestock stock on Limley Farm. Mr. Speaker, we are well on the way with our plans and progress to improve and increase goat production on the farm and on Carriacou and Petite Martinique in general. Mr. Speaker, this is all in an attempt to embark on a goat cheese industry. Yes, Mr. Speaker, you heard correct, a goat cheese industry for Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Mr. Speaker, we've cleared over 2 acres of land for pasture grazing and to create paddocks to have adequate feed for the livestock on the farm and to aid farmers, especially during the dry season. Some of these cleared lands, Mr. Speaker, will be put into crop production as well, especially soursop and short-term crops such as watermelon. Mr. Speaker, more than 150 persons from Carriacou this year would have received extensive plowing services. And this year, Mr. Speaker, we are very happy to know that we have been able to bring this service to the people of Petite Martinique. This may seem trivial, Mr. Speaker, but it is a lot to the people of Petite Martinique who did not have that service for the last 4 or 5 years. At present, Mr. Speaker, the Division of Agriculture through the Japanese Climate Project embarked on a pasture management paddocking project in which, Mr. Speaker, 4 farmers throughout different parts of Carriacou and Petite Martinique received technical and material assistance in establishing pastures. Mr. Speaker, this project will also deliver a grass nursery at the Limley Farm, in which drought-imported grass, drought-resistant grass, will be grown and distributed for the livestock farmers. Mr. Speaker, during the dry season, we have a very serious challenge with roaming animals. It is what we call, Mr. Speaker, the let-go season. It's a season where people just let go the cow, the sheep, the goat, and of course these animals then trespass onto persons, farmers' property, and cause extensive damage to same. Mr. Speaker, this is an issue that affects farmers in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. It affects homeowners. And as such, Mr. Speaker, while I understand the reason for such actions, yet, Mr. Speaker, this cannot be condoned. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to inform this Honorable House that come 2019, the impounding program will be in full effect. Mr. Speaker, this is an effort to assist farmers and homeowners with the problems caused by stray animals. Mr. Speaker, the Division of Agriculture will make this one of its priority in the coming year. Mr. Speaker, additionally, we have begun to look at the Stock Trespass Act, which deals with this issue, and to look at ways in which this legislation can be strengthened through amendments to better protect farmers and homeowners who suffer the wrath of these animals. Mr. Speaker, with respect to our fisheries section, this section continues year after year to show massive improvement. And Mr. Speaker, through external funding, the division facilitated a fish aggregated device workshop for fishers in Leicester, Carriacou, and a hazard analysis and critical control points workshop for fishers in Petite Martinique. In total, Mr. Speaker, over 75 fisher folks received training together with ice boxes and other equipment. As a result of that, Mr. Speaker, as a result of that training, Mr. Speaker, an additional 12,000 pounds of fish was landed at the Hillsborough Fish Market in a 5-month period. Mr. Speaker, the fishing department continues to see an increase in catch and sales, and the records show that a total of 525 pounds of fish was landed at the Hillsborough Fish Market. A total of 3,965 pounds of lobsters were exported at a total cost of $317,200, bringing much needed revenue, Mr. Speaker, to the people, the ordinary fisher folks of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Mr. Speaker, of course, what we can expect in 2019 is a continued training and inspection of fishing vessels and fish for export to ensure, Mr. Speaker, that the HACCP standards and quality are maintained, not just for local market and consumption, Mr. Speaker, but also for external markets as well. Mr. Speaker, the Sandy Island Oyster Bed Marine Protected Area has been given some attention during this last year. Through partnership with SUSGREN, we were able to maintain the employment of the manager and other office positions that was necessary for the unit's full functioning and its effectiveness. Mr. Speaker, an additional 25 moorings were added in the Sandy Island area. We were able to install biorocks in the protected areas to encourage reef regeneration and eventually more fishes for our people. More fishes for our people means more money for our people. More money for our people, Mr. Speaker, means a growing economy. Mr. Speaker, thanks to our partners such as Rich to Reef and SUSGREN, the Nature Conservation, and others that have provided the much needed support and training to our fisher folks in this area. The MPA wardens, Mr. Speaker, and of course the Ministry of Carriacou and Petite Martinique and local government. Mr. Speaker, very recently, over 182 persons from Carriacou and Petite Martinique received official letters of authorization to begin the absolute ownership to various lots of Crown land in Carriacou. Mr. Speaker, this has been a very long outstanding matter, dating all the way back, Mr. Speaker, to 2008, Mr. Speaker. In 2008, Mr. Speaker, this government would have approved various persons in Carriacou and Petite Martinique to purchase Crown lands. Mr. Speaker, as a result of that, many persons went ahead. Some paid the entire purchase price. Some paid some. Some went to lending institutions. Mr. Speaker, some even started occupation and possession of those lots of land. Mr. Speaker, these lands were taken away by the NDC administration from the people in 2008 when they assumed office. And Mr. Speaker, this issue was one of the first issues that I dealt with upon being elected as the Member of Parliament for Carriacou. And Mr. Speaker, I was very happy to be able to bring some measure of joy and comfort and some measure of certainty to these persons who have been waiting, Mr. Speaker, from since 2008. I know, Mr. Speaker, that they will be spending a happier Christmas after receiving those Christmas. Mr. Speaker, we could never underestimate the power of land ownership. We could never underestimate what having that little title deed can do to a person, a poor, marginalized person who would not have gotten that opportunity other than that opportunity to own a small parcel of lands for themselves and for the families. And Mr. Speaker, I am very happy to have been placed in this position to have been able to assist. Mr. Speaker, I want to move on now to the Public Works Division within the Ministry of Carriacou and Petite-Martinique Affairs. And Mr. Speaker, the upgrading of our infrastructure continues to be a priority for the Public Works Division in 2018, and it will be, or it will continue to be, a priority for us in 2019 and beyond. Mr. Speaker, bear with me, because a lot was done with respect to infrastructural projects and development in Carriacou and Petite-Martinique. And Mr. Speaker, I wish to list each and every one of them. Mr. Speaker, most importantly and very recently, we saw the opening of Arterial Bay Port Facility, a state-of-the-art, modern port facility, which was constructed, Mr. Speaker, in the tune of in excess of $7 million. And Mr. Speaker, what I'm most pleased and happy about with respect to that facility is the inclusion and the creation of a passenger terminal at that facility. This would mean, Mr. Speaker, that no longer would we, the people of Carriacou and Petite-Martinique, would have to wait in the sun, the snow, or the rain to catch our ferry of choice to embark on our different voyages. But rather, Mr. Speaker, we'll be seated in the comfort of that passenger terminal that is fully air-conditioned, that has comfortable seats, that have comfortable and clean bathrooms, so that we can be comfortable, Mr. Speaker, prior to our embarkation with respect to our journeys. Mr. Speaker, I am aware that there are many concerns with respect to the moving and that movement from the Hillsborough area to the Harveyville area. I've heard the concerns, and I note all of them, especially as it relates to the people of Petite-Martinique. And, Mr. Speaker, very soon, I will be meeting with all the stakeholders, all the businessmen in and within the Hillsborough area, all the stakeholders, all the persons that have been somehow affected by this move. Myself, together with the General Manager of the Grenada Port Authority, will be meeting to discuss, to see how we can alleviate some of the challenges that are now being faced by some of these persons. But let me assure Mr. Speaker that Hillsborough will remain the tongue of Carriacou and Petite-Martinique. And we will do everything to ensure that the move from Hillsborough to Harveyville does not significantly impact, especially our business persons. Mr. Speaker, We also saw the construction of 300 feet of concrete road and drains in the Petit Martinique main road, the Petit Martinique area. We saw, Mr. Speaker, completion of various slipper drains, solution drains throughout the length and breadth of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Mr. Speaker, very recently, 300 feet of concrete road and solution drain was undertaken and completed in the Mount Pleasant area. 300 feet of concrete drain and road and slipper drain, Mr. Speaker, was completed in the Bellevue South area. Speaking about Petit Martinique, Mr. Speaker, over 400 feet of concrete road and a retaining wall was done in Petit Martinique. Mr. Speaker, we had the resurfacing of the Dover Top Road, the resurfacing of the Mount Royal Top Road. We also had rehabilitation work to a community system in Leicester. And Mr. Speaker, presently under construction is a Hillsborough solution drain, the construction of 300 feet of road in the Bossiju area is what we know as the Power Station Road, and the remaining, Mr. Speaker, 650 feet of road in the Bellevue South area. Mr. Speaker, this will actually complete the Bellevue South Road, and it is our hope that this road will be completed in time for Christmas. Mr. Speaker, also presently under construction is 300 feet of storm drain in the Lauriston area. And this, Mr. Speaker, is in an effort to mitigate against flooding and other natural disasters. Mr. Speaker, the Public Works Division of the Ministry also oversaw the renovation of the doctor's quarters at the Princess Royal Hospital, the Dumfries Farm Road that was undertaken by MARIP, which now, Mr. Speaker, give the farmers in that area motorable road to their farms. Mr. Speaker, we saw the restoration of the Grambe system, and this was done, Mr. Speaker, in partnership with the Japanese Caribbean Climate Project. And Mr. Speaker, we had many other projects that was done for the year so far. Bearing in mind, Mr. Speaker, that the year is not yet completed. Mr. Speaker, in the area of sports, culture, and community development, it is well established that Carriacou is a mecca for culture. That is without a doubt, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, and such, we have many cultural festivals. Many cultural festivals. The government, Mr. Speaker, through the Ministry of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, provided and will continue to provide subventions and support to all the national and public festivals in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Mr. Speaker, these festivals include the Carriacou and Petit Martinique Carnival Festival, the Carriacou Regatta Festival, the Carriacou and Maroon and String Band Music Festival, which I know my friend from St. Mark loves. The Whitsuntide Regatta Festival, Mr. Speaker, the Petit Martinique Tourism and Culture Heritage Festival, the Carriacou Con Festival, Mr. Speaker, and of course, our Parang Festival. You see, Mr. Speaker, almost every month we have a festival. And so, Mr. Speaker, I will be bold this afternoon and very brave to ask and to advocate, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, to have March 4th, Carnival Monday, Carriacou Carnival Monday, be declared a national public holiday for the state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. So that, Mr. Speaker, all my friends and colleagues, including, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, can attend and visit Carriacou on the Monday of 4th March 2019. Mr. Speaker, with respect to those festivals, we do have some issues. It's no secret. And Mr. Speaker, my ministry, in conjunction with the Ministry of Culture, reconstituted, Mr. Speaker, the Carriacou and Petite Martinique Festivals Board. Mr. Speaker, at present, we are in the process of setting up a secretariat, and we have met with almost all the stakeholders, including, Mr. Speaker, our Parang Festival, which is to be held later on next month. Mr. Speaker, these festivals are very important to the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. We look forward to it. It's a time when we dress up, Mr. Speaker. It's a time when we socialize. It's a time when we have the most form of entertainment taking place on the island of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Mr. Speaker, it's a time when we see growth in our economy. So, Mr. Speaker, visitors and citizens from the diaspora come home in multitudes to participate and enjoy these festivals. Mr. Speaker, the onus is on us as a government to preserve these cultural festivals, not just for ourselves, but for our children and for generations to come. Mr. Speaker, in the area of sport, two of our local cricketers, Aaron John and Josh Edmond, were selected on the national under-19 cricket team that played in the Windward Islands tournament this year. Mr. Speaker, we had outstanding performances from the two secondary schools on island in the Intercall Games 2018. Bishop's College, Mr. Speaker, placed third in the male division, while the females placed seventh. And Hillsborough Secondary School took fifth place in the male categories and fourth place in the females. Mr. Speaker, there was a time, not too far ago, when we came to Grenada, both schools, and at that time we combined, and we did not even get one medal. Now, Mr. Speaker, we are ranking third, fourth. And Mr. Speaker, I predict it may not come forth in 2019, but very soon, that Intercall Championship will go very soon to one of the schools in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Mr. Speaker, Carriacou and Petite Martinique under 15 cricket team made the finals of the Grenada Cricket Association under 15 tournament, which was played at the Midi Stadium in Carriacou, and they placed second. Mr. Speaker, Carriacou and Petite Martinique placed third in the Grenada Netball Association Senior Tournament. Rufus Vespri was named the Youth Sportsman of the Year, a title bestowed upon him by the Grenada Olympic Committee in December of last year. Mr. Speaker, in football, a team from Carriacou and Petite Martinique competed in the Pure Grenada Cup at the senior level for the first time. The under-19 Uprising football team represented Grenada, Carriacou and Petite Martinique, not Grenada, Carriacou and Petite Martinique, in the GFA Youth Football Club Tournament up to the quarterfinals of the competition. Mr. Speaker, just over 80,000 was spent on sports program and on sporting facilities in Carriacou and Petite Martinique under the year of review. Extensive work, Mr. Speaker, has also been done in Petite Martinique. We had, Mr. Speaker, the lighting of the hard court so that young people from Petite Martinique can engage in late evening activities. The lone playing field, Mr. Speaker, received much needed attention. Mr. Speaker, it was graded, backfilled, and leveled so that it could be a place for recreation for the people of Petite Martinique. Not just the people, but also the children of Petite Martinique. At present, Mr. Speaker, as I speak, that field is now being grassed. And Mr. Speaker, after many years, the Petite Martinique RC School will be able to hold their sporting events at that field this year. Mr. Speaker, the Masters Cricket Tournament is becoming one of our largest sporting events on our calendar. And this, Mr. Speaker, is a tournament that is held at the same time, on the same weekend, as our popular Maroon Festival. Last year, Mr. Speaker, this tournament saw participation of over 16 teams, and more is expected in 2019. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we, the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, are asking that more attention, or for more attention to be given to our sporting facilities. And of course, for more support by way of training, coaching, and of course, the general holistic development as it relates to our sporting facilities. Mr. Speaker, therefore, our main playing field in the heart of our town, Hillsborough, the Hillsborough Recreational Ground, must, Mr. Speaker, is a must. This facility must be lighted in 2019. This is a facility, Mr. Speaker, that is used for almost every sporting, every social activity that is taking place on island. Mr. Speaker, as with the other constituencies in the area of youth, 52 young persons from Carriacou and Petite Martinique were added to the new Imani program. A further 30 young men recently registered in the Empower program. Mr. Speaker, additionally, 15 young persons in Petite Martinique are presently being trained in furniture making. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Youth staged many youth activities and programs during the year under review. And I know it is well placed and well poised to continue to develop and implement programs and activities best suited for the youthful population of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Mr. Speaker, the Division of Social Development. And Mr. Speaker, this government, we can truly say that this is a government that looks after the poor and the marginalized in our society. There's no doubt about that. That is what we're known for. This is a government, Mr. Speaker, that has the interest of the less fortunate and the vulnerable in our society. And you know, Mr. Speaker, this was one of the things that drew me to this party. This was one of the things I saw in this party that caused me, Mr. Speaker, to be affiliated with this new national party. And so, Mr. Speaker, I have absolutely no regrets. And so, Mr. Speaker, when I see the prominence in which social development is given in the budget that was presented, I'm even more fortified in my view that this government is the best government and the only government that has the people, the poor people of this country, at its heart. Mr. Speaker, for the year under review, through the school bus transportation program, assistance was provided to more than 160 persons. A substantial sum, Mr. Speaker, was spent on the delivery of social programs in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. These include, Mr. Speaker, public assistance, the elderly assistance, children assistance, pauper burial assistance, emergency food supplies, medical assistance through payments to institutions, provision of transportation, among other. Mr. Speaker, but as it relates to the elderly assistance, it is known that persons in Grenada are currently receiving $300 monthly, while those in Carriacou and Petite Martinique continue to receive $200 monthly. Mr. Speaker, this situation must be regularized as soon as possible. It is not fair, Mr. Speaker, nor is it equitable. And so, those persons who are really in need must, Mr. Speaker, be afforded that $300 by way of elderly assistance. And Mr. Speaker, this must be done even before any further increase is contemplated on mainland Grenada. The situation in Carriacou and Petite Martinique must be sorted out first. Mr. Speaker, I do understand some of the challenges that are faced. And I am prepared, Mr. Speaker, to work to ensure that as soon as the 1st of January comes, Mr. Speaker, 2019, persons from Carriacou and Petite Martinique will begin to receive the $300. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I'll be working very closely with the Minister of Social Development to ensure that this is done. Mr. Speaker, the Top Hill Senior Citizens Home received a subvention of $180,000. This funding, Mr. Speaker, we believe is very essential in ensuring that our senior citizens are provided with the best care in the twilight years. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, we continue to take care of our elderly citizens at their homes through the geriatric program, a program, Mr. Speaker, we will be expanding in 2019 so that we can touch more lives and the lives of our people. Mr. Speaker, a total of 45 persons benefited from the house repair program, a program, Mr. Speaker, which we will continue in all its glory in 2019. Mr. Speaker, speaking about housing, presently under construction, after a very unfortunate incident involving fire, the low-income housing development in Dumfries, Carriacou is well on its way. Mr. Speaker, speaking about progress, that is progress. At the completion of this project, Mr. Speaker, we will see over 150 decent housing accommodation that will be made available to the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Mr. Speaker, the people who needs it most. Many families and individuals, Mr. Speaker, have already added their names to a list for a chance, Mr. Speaker, to own one of those homes. Mr. Speaker, the work brigade attached to the housing department would have assisted many persons by effecting much needed repairs to their homes, and in some cases, new homes were actually built. The work brigade, Mr. Speaker, will not only continue, but it will intensify. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, a total of 1,237 students benefited from the school uniform program in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Mr. Speaker, we have been able to provide 5 bathroom and toilet facilities to the elderly and to persons suffering with disabilities. This program, Mr. Speaker, is really touching and changing lives. And of course, we should expect continuation of this program in 2019. Mr. Speaker, I believe that a bathroom facility is not a luxury, but, Mr. Speaker, is actually a basic need. It's a basic human right, Mr. Speaker, that we should try to afford to every citizen of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique who does not have one. Mr. Speaker, many persons received and is continuing to receive assistance through the Needy Assistance Program through the Parliamentary Office. This too, Mr. Speaker, will continue. Mr. Speaker, we have a lot to boast of. In the area of agriculture, of education, Mr. Speaker, both secondary schools, Bishop's College and Hillsborough Secondary School, continue year after year to be top performers in the state academically and otherwise. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Roshan Lendo of the Hillsborough Secondary School was the top performer for the state. Yes, Mr. Speaker, for the state. He, Mr. Speaker, attained 15 CXC passes with 15 grade 1s. Just the year before that, Mr. Speaker, we had Shaniza Steele from that same Hillsborough Secondary School, who secured 16 CXC passes, Mr. Speaker, with 12 grade 1s. Mr. Speaker, the Hillsborough Secondary School in 2018 also brought home the much coveted SGU Knowledge Bowl trophy. Mr. Speaker, Bishop's College student Diani Gelazano also placed in the top performances with 13 CXC subjects with 10 grade 1s. Mr. Speaker, both of our secondary schools in the state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique is performing exceptionally. And I must say, Mr. Speaker, that this is not a one-off something. We are accustomed. It is something that we have been doing year after year after year after year. And I am certain, Mr. Speaker, that for years to come, that we will be seeing better performances from our students from Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Mr. Speaker, I also want to extend congratulations to Bishop's College, a finalist in the Grenlec debate competition yesterday. Mr. Speaker, it gets even better because Bishop's College appeared not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times, Mr. Speaker, in the finals of the Grenlec debate competition. Mr. Speaker, we are doing something great in Carriacou and Petite Martinique with respect to education. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to commend here in this honorable house the principals, the teachers, parents, staff, the education department for the continuous hard work with our children. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, for the last week or so, I was somewhat depressed. I was depressed because of what was happening, Mr. Speaker, with our children and the education of our children. Mr. Speaker, I know the value of education. I understand the value of education. I know where education can bring a person. Mr. Speaker, I came from a very, very poor family, a single parent of 7 children, second of 7 children. And I am only standing here today because of education. And so, Mr. Speaker, we must not take this word, we must not take it simple. It is a big deal. And so that is why, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage and I want to ask all the parties that are engaged in this industrial dispute to sit around the table and to have our nation's children at heart. Sit around the table and have our nation's children at heart. And Mr. Speaker, I believe that if that is done honestly, that there will be a quick and amicable resolution to this ongoing industrial problem. Mr. Speaker, as we look towards 2019, I must say that we are closer than ever to seeing a start of construction at Bishop's College. Mr. Speaker, a series of consultations with the Ministry of Education, that project department, Mr. Speaker, engineers, CDB representatives, parents, and teachers was recently held in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. And Mr. Speaker, I am advised that work is projected to commence during the first quarter of 2019. Mr. Speaker, I must touch on the issue of health. And Mr. Speaker, I was very happy to hear in the budget that in 2019, the Princess Royal Hospital and the Hillsborough Clinic will be made smart. Mr. Speaker, I welcome the announcement that both facilities will be renovated and will be made state-of-the-art facilities. Mr. Speaker, I also welcome the announcement that from January 2019, the Princess Royal Hospital, like all the other hospitals on mainland Grenada, will have its full complement of doctors at all times, something, Mr. Speaker, I've advocated for since coming into office. Mr. Speaker, it is a fact that a simple blood test cannot be conducted at our hospital. Mr. Speaker, it is also a fact that an X-ray or even an ultrasound cannot be conducted at the hospital. As a result, Mr. Speaker, blood samples have to be transported from Carriacou to Grenada via boat. And you know what happens sometimes, Mr. Speaker? The blood gets spoiled. And so what you find happening, Mr. Speaker, is that persons have to leave Carriacou to come to Grenada just to do a blood test. Mr. Speaker, we're in 2019, and this situation cannot be allowed to continue. But, Mr. Speaker, I am comforted in the fact that this government takes health care very seriously. And I'm even more comforted in the fact, Mr. Speaker, that with a smart hospital, with a smart clinic, that will be able to provide these services to the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique in Carriacou and not, Mr. Speaker, in Grenada. Mr. Speaker, some of our major projected program for 2019 are as follows. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to upgrade our road network on the island. Provisions, of course, will be made for drains. Work, Mr. Speaker, is expected to be done on the Bredner Road, the Mount Pleasant Point Road, the Lower and Upper Lauriston Roads, the Bogles Main Road, the Cherry Hill Main Road, the Limley Farm Road, the Hermitage Road, the Bel Air Main Road leading to the hospital, and many pieces throughout the length and breadth of Petite Martinique. Mr. Speaker, additionally, work in conjunction with NAWASA to expand and complete the pipeline network of designated areas in Carriacou, that is, Mr. Speaker, the Princess Royal Hospital and the southern parts of Carriacou, is also on the table. There are plans, Mr. Speaker, to install another desalination plant, this time to the northern end of Carriacou, to complement our present plan. A proposal, Mr. Speaker, was forwarded by NAWASA on our behalf to 5Cs. And this was done, Mr. Speaker, in collaboration with the Ministry of Climate Resilience. At present, Mr. Speaker, we await a response from 5Cs regarding acceptance of this project. Mr. Speaker, with great anticipation, we look forward to this project, which will bring much needed relief to many people in Carriacou and Petite Martinique, especially to our farmers during the dry season. Mr. Speaker, we expect works to commence on the main jetty in Petite Martinique and further coastal erosion work, Mr. Speaker, to prevent coastal erosion in Petite Martinique. Mr. Speaker, we expect to see repairs on our main administrative building in Hillsborough, which houses many of our departments. Mr. Speaker, we expect to see further developments at our airport. Mr. Speaker, we expect the upgrade and renovation of the Carriacou Police Station and the procurement of a fire implement for Petite Martinique. Mr. Speaker, more skills training and development for our young people in 2019 is an absolute must. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to look for creative and innovative ways to create more employment for our young people, especially, Mr. Speaker, our males. So, Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the Ministry of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, I wish to thank all the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique for their unwavering support. Mr. Speaker, I also want to extend thanks to my permanent secretary in the Ministry of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, who is here this afternoon, Ms. Rolda Kwamina, for her hard work, dedication to the task. And Mr. Speaker, both of us came in very new. Ms. Rolda Kwamina, in excess of 15 years, was a principal at Bishop's College. And so, Mr. Speaker, both of us had to find our way, of course, together with the other members of staff at the Ministry of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. And Mr. Speaker, what made it work for us was our drive to see Carriacou and Petite Martinique benefit. And so, Mr. Speaker, I really want to place on record my profound thanks and gratitude to the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Carriacou and Petite Martinique and all the other staff who I know is listening to this presentation. Mr. Speaker, I also want to express heartfelt thanks and appreciation to all the heads of division and the rank and file members for the service, for dedication, and sacrifice to national development. Mr. Speaker, as a young female, politics is no easy feat. Mr. Speaker, as a mother of 2 young children, as a wife to a very young husband, it is very difficult. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to place on record my profound thanks to my family, my husband and my sons, for the continued support, for the love, and for everything during this period. And Mr. Speaker, I want all of us, all the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, to remain optimistic, for there is hope, for there is always hope, Mr. Speaker, in this government and in the new National Party. And so again, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all the people, and when I say all the people, I really do mean all the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique for the continued support. And I look forward, Mr. Speaker, for us forging along together, hand in hand, to build a better Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the Ministry of Legal Affairs. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Legal Affairs in 2018 continued to carry out government's legislative agenda in line with national priorities. and developmental goals. Mr. Speaker, for the year under review, the Ministry of Legal Affairs was able to successfully draft various pieces of legislation for submission to Parliament. Mr. Speaker, a total of 6 acts, 7 amendments, 20 statutory rules and orders were enacted for the period January to October 2018. Of note, Mr. Speaker, is the Non-Biodegradable Waste Control Act 2018, the Non-Biodegradable Waste Control Order, SRO number 18 of 2018, the Non-Biodegradable Waste Control Order, SRO number 19 of 2018, and, Mr. Speaker, the Rehabilitation of Offenders Order, SRO number 7 of 2019. Mr. Speaker, the Non-Biodegradable Waste Control Act and the corresponding SROs can only be described as progressive and is viewed, Mr. Speaker, as a major shift to ensure that our natural environment is protected and preserved for future generations to come. Mr. Speaker, this legislation seeks to regulate the use of non-biodegradable products with a view to reducing the negative environmental impacts these products may have on our environment, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, to improve the health of ordinary Grenadians. Mr. Speaker, as a result of this legislation, as of 4th September 2018, styrofoam products are now banned from being imported into Grenada. Single-use shopping bags with handles, as well as single-use plastic products, will be banned, Mr. Speaker, from being imported in Grenada from 1st February 2019. Mr. Speaker, it is worthy to note that other countries, such as Antigua, Barbuda, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, have already enacted these various pieces of legislation. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, in 2017, the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act was passed by Parliament. And the sole purpose of this piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker, was essentially to clean the records of convicted persons who would have committed minor infractions, Mr. Speaker. The legislation, Mr. Speaker, also seeks to address impediments which were experienced by many offenders, especially, Mr. Speaker, the juveniles. And so, Mr. Speaker, in order to give teeth to this piece of legislation, the Rehabilitation Offenders Board was established by Cabinet this year. This board, Mr. Speaker, was headed by the Attorney General for the sole purpose, Mr. Speaker, of processing applications. This board, Mr. Speaker, meets once every month to hear and determine these applications. To date, Mr. Speaker, the board received 43 applications, of which 34 applicants were successful. These persons, Mr. Speaker, especially the young persons, are no longer impeded by the conviction and thus are given another opportunity, a second chance, and an opportunity to be able, Mr. Speaker, to obtain certain employment, to be able to obtain certain visas, to travel abroad, to work. Mr. Speaker, this is in fact changing lives and have changed lives, especially for that of our young persons. Mr. Speaker, the work of the Attorney General Chambers, particularly that of the Litigation Department, continues to give yeoman service to the government in its quest to aid the business and function of government, as well as to strengthen government's services, its constitutional role in government, and the maintenance of the rule of law. Mr. Speaker, there are several matters involving the state, which is now before the court. And these matters, Mr. Speaker, raise important constitutional points. Mr. Speaker, it touches and concerns the operations of government and the interpretation and scope of the separation of powers doctrine. Mr. Speaker, as we all know, the Supreme Court Registry experienced a number of challenges in 2018, and we are still experiencing, Mr. Speaker, some of those challenges. Mr. Speaker, the gravest issue faced resulted from the environmental problems at our court location on the Carenage, the Lime Building. Mr. Speaker, government took the humane decision to close this facility. To date, Mr. Speaker, 2 of our courts have since been relocated, and we are now working feverishly towards securing a facility with the capacity to hold all of our courts, the staff, and the registry. Mr. Speaker, it was just yesterday, not yesterday, but on Wednesday afternoon, I met again with the President and members of the Grenada Bar Association to continue the conversation in our quest to find suitable accommodation to house all our courts. I am very convinced, Mr. Speaker, that not in the not distant future we'll be able to have this issue resolved. Mr. Speaker, but notwithstanding these infrastructural difficulties, the Court of Appeal sittings happened or convened, Mr. Speaker, during the months of May and October. Mr. Speaker, I must really place on record my sincere thanks and appreciation to the registrar and staff for the patience and understanding during this period of unsettlement, as well as to the President and members of the Grenada Bar Association who partnered and continue to partner with government in seeking alternative facilities for a court. Mr. Speaker, we spent days touring buildings. We spent many hours discussing the way forward. We created, Mr. Speaker, a WhatsApp chat called Court Accommodation in order to discuss this issue continuously and thoroughly. So, Mr. Speaker, I fully understand and is quite aware that there were many periods of uncertainty and that the work of the bar was at times impeded. But today, Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the bar and the people of this country that the government is committed to finding suitable accommodation to house our court plant in a timely manner. Mr. Speaker, for this and in this regard, I remain truly committed. For the long term, Mr. Speaker, I wish to inform that government appointed a subcommittee chaired by myself, which committee, Mr. Speaker, is responsible for engaging in discussions with regard to a long-term solution. Really, Mr. Speaker, a committee set up and designed to explore options with respect to the acquisition of our halls of justice. Mr. Speaker, we have started to review plans and diagrams and also source of funding. And, Mr. Speaker, this plan is on its way to becoming a reality. Mr. Speaker, we've also experienced challenges with the court reporting unit. And, Mr. Speaker, we've been able to deal with that challenge. By, Mr. Speaker, we'll be able to secure 2 court reporters, 2 transcriptionists, with additional 4 Imanis that will be trained in that area, Mr. Speaker, to alleviate the backlog of problems with respect to persons awaiting appeal from the Court of Appeal. Mr. Speaker, this is an effort to ensure that appeal matters can be heard swiftly and determined fairly by the Court of Appeal. Mr. Speaker, over the course of this year, serious efforts have been made to improve the staffing at the Supreme Court Registry. A new deputy registrar, Mr. Speaker, was appointed. Mr. Speaker, we had in excess of a total of 521 civil, criminal, and appeal matters that was filed in 2018. Mr. Speaker, however, I wish to pause here and to make mention of this disturbing trend. Mr. Speaker, the inordinate delay in delivery of judgments from our court is a serious matter that touches and concerns us as a government. This was pounced on by the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, in his address on Wednesday, Mr. Speaker, and so this is a very serious problem. It is unacceptable, Mr. Speaker, to wait for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years after a matter is determined, or even a preliminary point is argued for a judgment. This, Mr. Speaker, has the potential to cripple our economy. It has the potential, Mr. Speaker, to affect our rate of doing business. And, Mr. Speaker, it has the effect to undermine the confidence in our judiciary. We always must remember, Mr. Speaker, that justice denied is justice delayed. And so, Mr. Speaker, we cannot continue business as usual. Mr. Speaker, other areas, time, Mr. Speaker, may not permit me to touch on them in depth. But with respect to the corporate affairs and intellectual property, with respect, Mr. Speaker, to the anti-corruption review mechanisms, with respect to the work of the Integrity Commission, Mr. Speaker, all of this are going within the Ministry of Legal Affairs. And I really, Mr. Speaker, want to commend all the partners, all the stakeholders, all the people that are involved in the Ministry of Legal Affairs for their hard work, determination, dedication to ensure that government receive the best possible legal advice it can get. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, our main focus will be on reducing the backlog of the numbers of cases in our court system. It is far too many, Mr. Speaker. And this, Mr. Speaker, in addition to, of course, finding suitable and proper, comfortable accommodation to house our court plant, this would be another, Mr. Speaker, issue that will be taken upon. Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank and I wish to express my sincere appreciation to the staff of the Ministry of Legal Affairs, the Supreme Court Registry, the chambers of the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Magistracy, and the Corporate and Intellectual Office Affairs. Mr. Speaker, all these areas will have experienced infrastructure challenges this year, 2018. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank my permanent secretary in the Ministry of Legal Affairs, who's also here this afternoon. And again, Mr. Speaker, I just want to thank her for her valuable support, Mr. Speaker, valuable advice as we continue to build the Ministry of Legal Affairs, which I must add, Mr. Speaker, is in a transitionary period. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm mindful of the time, and I'm mindful that I may have even went over that additional 15 minutes. And so, no? I didn't take it yet? No. Oh, very well, Mr. Speaker. Maybe this note somewhat confused me a little bit. It is? I'm in the 15 minutes. Very well, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude again by thanking the Prime Minister and, of course, the other members of Cabinet and parliamentary colleagues for their support. I want to thank the Mother of Parliament. She stepped out a little bit, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Clarice Mother-Skirving. I can truly say that I'm one of her faithful daughters. And all the other parliamentarians, Mr. Speaker, for holding my hands, from picking me up, Mr. Speaker, on the times that I fell. And Mr. Speaker, again, I want to revert to Carriacou and to thank the people for Carriacou and Petite Martinique for placing me here, for, Mr. Speaker, without their vote of confidence on 13th March 2018, I would not be here. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm eternally grateful and thankful to each and every one of them. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Representative for Carriacou and Petite Martinique Affairs. You came close to the second bell.
I didn't want to infringe.
And honorable members, I think this is as good a time to adjourn and nourish ourselves for the next go at it later this afternoon. So we are leaving at say 1 o'clock, and we'll be back here at 2 o'clock. We leave at 1, we'll be back at 2. Honorable members, this House stands adjourned until 2 o'clock. Let's tell them I get hungry.
Government pension. What are the facts? Are all public workers entitled to pension? Are public workers owed gratuity? Here are the facts. Fact 1. The Pension Disqualification Act of 1983 was validated on April 21, 1985 by the democratically elected government led by former Prime Minister Herbert A. Blaize. This means that public workers employed after February 22, 1985 are not legally entitled to a pension from the government of Grenada. Fact 2. The judgment in the Hermelin Armstrong case does not create legal precedence for the reinstatement of pension to public workers employed after February 22, 1985. The judgment created a legal precedence only for those workers who joined the public service in a pensionable post between April 4, 1983 and February 22, 1985. There were 56 such workers. The government restored pension to those 56 workers in 2018 at a cost of $7.7 million. Fact 3. All officers employed in a pensionable post who joined the service after February 22, 1985 are not legally entitled to a pension from government. They are only entitled to a pension from NIS once they meet the necessary requirements as per the NIS Act. Fact 4. The Cabinet's decision in 2016 to reform pension is rooted in moral and social justice principles, and it is not a legal obligation. Therefore, any agreement on pension is a win for public workers. Fact 5. The MOU signed between government, the unions, and staff associations in February and March 2018 stated that the pension regime which will be implemented must be affordable and sustainable. Fact 6. The proposed pension regime for public workers employed between February 22, 1985 and December 31, 2018, as stated in the MOU, is a non-contributory pension plan. Therefore, no deductions will be taken from workers' salaries to finance their pension from government. Pensioners also benefit from any future negotiated salary increases. Fact 7. It was agreed by all parties that a worker's annual pension would be a minimum of 70% of their final salary to be paid jointly by the NIS and the government of Grenada. Fact 8. Government is not obligated to offer an advanced pension payment, commonly called a gratuity. Government has proposed to make an advanced pension payment of 2% of full pension, an amount it can practically and reasonably afford given its current and projected revenue stream. It should be noted that an advanced pension payment is a non-interest-bearing loan that the government grants to the pensioner, which must then be repaid in equal monthly installments in the form of a reduced monthly pension over 12.5 years. Fact 9. Under the proposed 2% advanced pension payment or gratuity, retirees will be entitled to a higher monthly pension than if a larger advanced payment was given. Fact 10. If the government accommodates any higher rate of gratuity, the implications would be severe for the country, as this will translate to higher taxes such as VAT, income tax and property tax, higher import duties, the possibility that hundreds of millions of dollars in grants would be lost, lower expenditure in critical areas such as healthcare, agriculture, roadworks and youth development, retrenchment of workers. These are the facts. Government is committed to an amicable resolution to the pension matter for the good of all Grenadians.
Government announces reduction in personal income tax for income in excess of $5,000 per month. Details to this story and more in the National Report. With the details to the news, I am Rikisha St. Louis. Close to 300 persons will have more money in their pockets in the new year when government increases ex gratia payments to at least $350 EC. This was one of the budgetary measures announced by Finance Minister Dr. The Right Honorable Keith Mitchell during a presentation of the billion-dollar budget on Wednesday. Dr. Mitchell said there will also be some relief for those whose income is in excess of $5,000 per month.
Commencing from the tax period 2019, personal income tax will be reduced to 28% for income in excess of $5,000 per month. Similarly, corporate tax will be reduced to 28%. Mr. Speaker, these 2 percentage points reduction would obviously affect government revenue, but more importantly, it will help stimulate the local economy, putting more disposable income in the hands of workers, and for companies affording them extra capital to potentially invest and grow their respective business.
The Grenada government has extended an invitation to unions and staff associations to return to the negotiating table on Friday, November 23rd at the Pension Secretariat, Upper Lucas Street. It did so in another letter today to the Grenada Union of Teachers, TAU, PWU, and the 3 staff associations, Prison Officers Welfare Association, Police Welfare Association, and Police Gazetted Officers Association. The letter expresses government's interest in engaging in fresh negotiations that address all the factors to determine the best formula for the advanced pension payment or gratuity that does not compromise the fiscal rules. The letter, which was signed by Mrs. Beryl Isaac, chairman of the Pension Engagement Committee, said government in a letter dated November 20th, 2018, informed of its willingness to re-engage on the issue of advanced pension payment and in good faith has set aside the 2% advanced pension payment as previously proposed. It added that the gratuity is not determined by a mere rate, but rather the value is predicted on an agreed rate along with other factors, and while a rate is the matter of contention at this point, the government is prepared to discuss any rate with the clear understanding that it cannot be divorced from other factors. The time for Friday's proposed meeting is 10 a.m. Government ministers are speaking out against the involvement of students in what they call adult dispute. Minister for Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment, Honorable Delma Thomas, and Minister for Health and International Business, Honorable Nicholas Steele, say unions and teachers are wrong to involve students in the ongoing dispute for 25% advanced pension payment or gratuity, as it is referred. On Thursday, students took to the streets of St. David with placards, adding their voices to the industrial action now in its third week. During the presentation of the 2019 estimates of revenue and expenditure, Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Dr. The Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, stressed that if the government accedes to the request being made by the unions, the country will be crippled financially. During their contributions to the budget on Thursday, both ministers reminisced on the occurrences of 1983 when students joined a planned protest, the lives that were lost and the chaos that ensued. They say history must not be allowed to repeat itself.
History has shown us. We mark certain days. Bloody Monday, bloody this or bloody that. One thing that is significant that affects us the most, that we find unforgiving in those instances, is when children were used to send a message that parents should be discussing. When children are used because of disputes of adults as pawns, then we are going in the wrong direction.
Minister Steele says the student bodies must be encouraged to stand up in more children-friendly matters.
But if any of us use our children as pawns, that is wrong. If we want to mobilize our student councils, let us mobilize them for child violence. If we want to mobilize our student councils, let us mobilize them for the rights of the child. If we want our children out there marching, let our children march for healthy lifestyles. Let our children march for their rights. Don't let our children march for adult disputes.
Social Development Minister Honorable Delma Thomas challenged the unions to return to the negotiating table to resolve the matter to avoid further escalation.
We call on our parents to ensure that our children remain safe and disciplined and not drawn into any activity that can be detrimental to them. History must not repeat itself, and our students must not be allowed to be exploited or to be made pawns in issues that they may not even fully understand. Mr. Speaker, I beg everyone, including the union leaders, to get back to the negotiating table. Let us negotiate. Let us see how we can work out an amicable solution to the issue that is now confronting us.
This is the National Report. We'll have more news after the break.
The National Cultural Awards and Dinner, Saturday, November 24th.
Radisson Ballroom at 7 p.m. It's a red carpet event honoring our cultural icons.
An expression of appreciation for their contributions.
Join with us and celebrate their great works. Limited tickets available for $150 at the Grenada Cultural Foundation. Call us on 435-2839.
Dress formal and share in the experience. Feature speaker, the legendary Paul Keynes Douglas. The National Cultural Awards and Dinner, a Grenada Cultural Foundation initiative supported by the National Lotteries Authority and the Grenada Tourism Authority.
Welcome back. Education Minister Honorable Emmeline Pear is expressing concern about an issue that she says has been brought to her attention, where political activists claiming to act on behalf of the unions are seeking to influence students in many schools to participate in a series of protest actions, conceivably in support of striking teachers. The minister has since issued a statement appealing to parents to engage their children to ensure that they do not get caught up in what she referred to as this unprecedented attempt at partisan agitation. The statement says they have also taken note of the complaint of some parents who have reported that their children are being lured into activities without their consent and permission. Minister Pear says the entire community must safeguard against children and students being used by political activists and confusion makers, and also parents should ensure that their children remain secure and safe. Her statement ended by saying that government has already indicated its willingness to continue the dialogue with the Grenada Union of Teachers and looks forward to their acceptance, since a negotiated settlement is in the interest of both teachers and students. And finally, the National Health Insurance Secretariat has launched its logo competition. Students of primary and secondary school, as well as the T.A. Marichaud Community College and the general public, are invited to submit their artistic pieces before midnight on December 31st, 2018. Entries must be original submission and must communicate simplicity and professionalism. The winning logo will become the brand identity and exclusive property of the NHI Secretariat. Its communications officer, Abigail McIntyre, outlined some of the criteria during a press briefing on Thursday.
The logo should communicate health, simplicity, and professionalism. The competition is also open to all primary, secondary school students in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. It must be the original work of the entrant or the student. The logo must be submitted electronically on 8.5 by 11 sized paper. The design can be text or symbol, or it can be a combination of both text and symbol. Designs must be in the following file formats: JPG, BMP, GIF, that we also call GIF, PNG, or TIFF.
Prizes include a tablet for the winner in the schools competition and a laptop for the winner of the general public competition. That story just ended the national report for today, Thursday, November 22nd. Let's recap the top story. Government announces reduction in personal income tax for income in excess of $5,000 per month. On behalf of all those who made this newscast possible, I am Rikisha St. Louis saying thank you for viewing. Until next time.